Here's a message of importance to millions of people who are continually pale and washed out, weak and run down. Doctors will tell you that these conditions are often caused by a deficiency of iron. The iron you need to keep you physically fit and mentally alert. Medical studies show that 2 out of 3 women and many, many men lack the daily iron your body requires in a form your body can easily use and put to work. Every dose gives you more than your daily minimum iron requirement.
We are the way. We are the way. We are not alone. We are striving.
So if you're not getting the iron your body needs, if you feel weak, run down, and are easily upset, start taking iron today.
It's Friday, my dudes.
Well, TGIF. Thank God it's
What?
Thank God it's Friday. Thank God we are here with you, fine folks. My name is Josh Corey. Welcome to Have No Sphere, right here on the Iron Realm Media YouTube channel. You know what? We have got an awesome, exciting show planned. So I just don't want to F around too much. I'm going to jump right in and start saying hello. Let's just jump in with John Savage, because we are happy to have John Savage with us this weekend. John, how the hell you doing?
Savage! I'm doing all right, Josh. Thanks very much. I'm fumbling around, pushing buttons and multitasking here. So, yeah, sod it. I can't get my stream going properly.
Well, John,
Anyway.
just as a real quick tip, multitasking is really going to kill your concentration on the show. So if you would just stop multitasking and just focus on the task at hand, that would be great.
Okay, I'll take that on board. It's like video killed the radio star, isn't it? It's multitasking killed the conversation.
Stay out that chat, Savage.
Yeah, just because I'm so guilty of it, I'm just ribbing John a little bit. And who is that that's speaking up over there? Mr. Adam Meekin. Adam, how was your week? How are you doing?
Busy, but yeah, good to be here on the Friday TGIF. It's been a crazy week. It's bank holiday over here, but so looking forward to a nice weekend with the family and catching up a little bit as well with the Flat Earth. I've been out of it a little bit this week, so looking forward to a good chat this evening. Got a couple of bits. Kind of kept me distracted from research this week, was sticking the video in, so looking forward to a little quick review of that. But yeah, all well and good, mate. I'm looking forward to a good evening. So before you hand over, I'll do the ask. Let's ask Josh. How are you, pal? Because you always get left out.
You know what? This may not be the best time for a Josh rant. We may have to save a Josh rant in a couple hours, because you've got too much good information, and I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to not multitask and stay focused for the task at hand. But I'll tell you what, it is weird. We don't call them bank holidays, but over here in the U.S., we actually have a 3-day holiday weekend too. This coming Monday is Memorial Day, and I guess we're supposed to be memorializing all of the people who have fallen in wars, in foreign wars or something. I don't know. I think it's another Hallmark holiday. I'm not sure. It's what it sounds like. I don't know. Just make sure you go out and buy your favorite relative a Memorial Day card or something. I don't know. But they're not called bank holidays here in the U.S. Walt would know. He's here in the U.S. with me. Walter Johnson, Mr. Flat Earth Head there on YouTube. Walt, how are you doing this week?
Well, as soon as I find my mute button, I'll be doing a lot better. I don't have a clue. All I know is some weekends I was out of school an extra day. Some weeks I was out of work an extra day. I really have never really. Yes, it's some type of memorialization of the war efforts.
So
I'm really 100% not sure of the details, but I know someone who might be. But we're not there yet, are we? Oh, wait, we are, because we don't have Zach with us.
we are
Darn it.
out Zach and we are out Rob this
And
week.
Rob.
Neither one will be
On
able
the
to
end of
join
the
us.
line. I'm
So we're
bringing-
short staffed, but man, do we have someone else in store.
Well, I'll
Why
shut
don't you
up my
take that, Walt? You do it.
I'll shut up my yapping. I don't have that long, wonderful introduction anywhere. I wrote, let's just say this. If you missed Tuesday's show with this gentleman, you definitely need to go listen to it. My neighbor's there. He's repping up. He's getting excited for it. It was a great show. We could have gone in 1,000 directions. We went in about 100. It was great. The topics were endless. I will post the link to that show here in this description for this show. So it has a beautiful introduction that I don't have in front of me because, like John, I'm multitasking, trying to get in chat, trying to say hello to everyone. James True, welcome to the Iron Realm Media Have No Spear Friday Fringecast.
So
As you see, it's a little more laid back atmosphere here than it is on TFR. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week since you invited me. So yeah, and Memorial Day is a massive holiday to instill the triumphant in Rome would be the one that comes home winning a battle, and he requests a triumphant, which literally means I want a parade. I want all the women lined up like cheering for me. I want all the men outside like giving me prana. And that's really what Memorial Day is doing. It's cementing the mind control, saying that if you give your life for a satanic machine, this is one of the perks. One of these holidays is named after you, and that's what encourages people to call following orders patriotism. That's how you paint the archetype. So,
Do you guys have? Do you have like George Washington Day, or do you have?
yeah, we
actually,
have President's Day too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's more about, there's a patriarchal father figure that is better than anything you've ever met, and we honor him on this day.
it's like Christmas.
Yeah, basically.
You just got to believe
With
it.
no toys.
But no toys. Well, imaginary slave chains, I guess you can play with. We can ask for more links or less links for our neighbors or whatever it is. But I think that's really going to set the tone for the rest of tonight, because this show is going to be just jam-packed with information, and we don't have any fucking clue where it's going to lead, which I think can be some of the best stuff, because no matter how much we plan, we always tend to find little gems in other directions from the left turns that we tend to make. So I'm really looking forward to this. But there was a few little bits and bobs that I think we wanted to get out of the way first before we got in too deep with James. Adam, you had some stuff that you wanted to get into, yeah? So force the line stuff?
Yeah, I thought that's the bit that I was alluding to that I really haven't had a chance to get into and get my head round, and therefore I'm not fit to comment upon anything of it, but I did want to give the guys a shout out. It was my son's birthday last weekend, so spent the weekend with the family, which was fantastic, but did miss that big thing. Obviously could have gone in on the live stream. I don't know if John did it, saw bits. I think he was glued to it.
I did, yeah. I was logged in, pretty much for the whole 2 days. I was just amazed that they managed to get so many people together in one place, up in Colorado, with Chris Van Maitre, with Bob Nodal, Cami. There was all sorts of people there, and they were doing some serious work. I was watching the live stream, and there was no sitting around and it wasn't a laugh, that's for sure. And so kudos to them for their tenacity in doing this, and that's probably the wrong word, enthusiasm, dedication. Top respects to them. And as far as I know, the results have either just come out or they're soon to be coming out. But as I understand it, we're trying to get someone on next Friday on IRM to properly go over what was done and why it was done. But force the level, yep, look it up on FE Core, go for it.
Going to do some hard begging, aren't we? Cummy might be around. She'll be well informed. So who knows? I know she's partying with Karen B at the moment.
I was going to say, I wanted to give Cami a big shout out because I know she and Karen B are chilling, and there's a good chance that they may be listening in or in chat right now as we speak, because I'm not in chat. I wouldn't know.
What a good boy.
I'm 2 steps away from putting on a sleep mask. And for those that don't know, a sleep mask is those masks you put over your eyes when you go to sleep.
I've got one on right now.
There you go, nodding off, Savage.
I probably will tonight because I stupidly decided to stick a new roof on my shed this afternoon. And so I've been tarting about with bitumen paint and what the hell is it called? Felt. But this stuff's proper. It's reinforced felt. And I've totally over-engineered the job. I've got LED flashing on there and all sorts. So that bastard ain't leaking for a long time. But I'm suffering now. I feel like I've been out at the beach all day. You know, that sort of feeling where your eyes are just itchy and everything. You just need a shower. And yeah. But yeah, if I nod off, just give us a shout.
I don't know what it is, but it seems like there's just something inherently funny about having to search in your brain and forgetting completely a monosyllabic word. I don't know what it is, but it makes me forget. makes me laugh, makes me chuckle about people who are trying to think of words like felt.
Oh.
Well, no, I was trying to think of polyester reinforced felt. So a few more syllables than that, but all I could get out was felt.
Now that's even funnier. It's polysyllabic, but the most I can get out is a monosyllabic grunt. Sounds like me trying to communicate. You know, most of the time Dixie doesn't know if I'm in bed next to her or not. Sometimes she doesn't even bother talking because she just doesn't think I'm there at all because I'm so quiet. And other times she'll talk to me and I won't even be in the room. It just wouldn't dawn on her because I'm just always so quiet.
You are incredibly quiet. And we join Hangouts and you're just there. You're not even muted and I can't hear you. I don't know whether you're, well, I don't know whether you are muted or not, but
that's right, because I have a secret mute if I'm muted or not.
There you go.
I'm able to see it. But that's why usually I'm quiet. No, I've always been kind of quiet.
I've got my seat button that no one knows about.
So there's another issue that we tend to tread lightly upon. And Adam took it upon himself to make a little video. And I think that sort of funnily made a couple points. Adam, I am going to share it if you want to give a little backstory to this.
Well, it's basically the long-awaited interview that Fight the Flat Earth's been sat on for, I think, the best part of a month. Since the kind of debate between Fight the Flat Earth and Anthony Riley with regards to is gravity a force, and I think it was stirred out of one of Anthony Riley's pieces of research where he came across some of George Musa, who's used to be, I think, the editor-in-chief of Scientific America, and a respected physicist, I think is probably the title. And in there he's talked about this snapping the wand in two of Newtonian force with Einstein's theory of bending of space-time. So it's been born out of that, and I think part of the challenge, Anthony was requested to give some questions as well, and the full video's up. I think it's about 20 odd minutes long, and it's worth a watch for a giggle. But there's a little bit that I just clipped out, which I thought was quite useful, because this is, you know, we're all searching for the truth. So it's good when, and I think the answer there, I think in the title I put academia answers, and it's good when a top academic gives eventually at least one of the sentences is direct to the point and honest, without trying to not say what he finally does say. So that's why I thought it was worth a shout. But I do think the middle bit's was worth putting in, as once again search for a coherent explanation and wasn't reached. So yeah, do you want to press play, Josh?
Surely can. And it's short. It's only what, like
3 minutes.
3 minutes, less than 4 minutes.
Now, there is a couple other things that Steve Moore had issues with. You wrote another article called "What is Space-Time?" And in it you say a year earlier, talking about Einstein, a year earlier he had formulated his general theory of relativity, which postulates that gravity is not a force that propagates through space, but a feature of space-time itself. Again, I see that as the same misunderstanding as the snapping of the one thing. It's the fact that you've said postulates that gravity is not a force. And I think that confuses him. So could you just clarify that particular phrase for me?
So gravity is not a force. When one is trying to understand why gravity operates in the universe, why there is a tendency of objects to attract one another, to orbit around one another, which is a type of, really comes from the attraction, why bodies pull themselves together into spherical shapes, for example, or discs type shapes in other systems. So why does that all happen? Then the idea of gravity as a force in the Newtonian sense of a kind of almost undefined entity that grabs things across space, that force concept becomes a problem when you're trying to understand why gravity works. The fact that gravity does work, it's obvious from everything around us. And when describing, maybe I should put it this way, when describing the workings of gravity, you shouldn't use force concepts. When you describe the effects of gravity, yes, use force concepts. You're perfectly entitled to speak of gravity as a force when you're working through its implications, when you're working through why things fall, why things move in the way they do.
Okay.
It's only when you start to get into the deep questions, and those are the ones, of course, I was dealing with in that particular article. In other articles, I'm perfectly happy to describe, and I do describe gravity as a force, as I do describe electrical forces or strong force or things like this, even though depending on context, I might not use the force terminology.
That actually answers it very well. Again, it's the fact that you use the phrase which postulates that gravity is not a force that propagates through space-time. He focuses on the words there, that gravity is not a force, and kind of ignores the rest of the context. So
yeah, that's fair. Gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Maybe that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've tried to explain to him, is that
gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Maybe that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've tried to explain to him, is that
gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Maybe that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've tried to explain to him, is that
gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Maybe that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've tried to explain to him, is that
gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Maybe that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah,
so that's it. That's pretty good.
So that clears things up,
doesn't it? Though, nice and clear now. You can tell it's buoyancy and density because it looks so much like gravity.
I just thought that was...
Maybe you can tell it's gravity because it looks so much like buoyancy. I don't know.
You want to turn autoplay off?
You know what? It doesn't matter how many times I turn autoplay off. Somehow it gets turned back on.
Yeah, so I'll stick that out there. Maybe a quick chance for James to come in. I don't know what you thought of that, mate. That was for me. It was like I said, quite telling. The whole 20 minutes is worth a listen to, particularly the complete absence of any actual scientific support of their postulations as weak as they are. In fact, the only bit they try to go anywhere near a so-called experiment is when I think at the end they ramble on a bit about trying to redo the Aristophanes sun shadows experiment. I can't even say experiment with regards to that. I'm not doing it. But yeah, James, what were your thoughts, pal?
Well, it bothers me that we're still trying to prove something that we theorized before we understood what electricity is. So
exactly.
I don't understand why we keep going back to, the temperance or the spirits or, whatever hoodoo guru you want to call Big G. It's this etheric spirit that has to be true. I think I wish I had this pulled out because I was doing something else when I watched, but I think Newton even was like, "Hey, don't put my name on gravity. That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard." And he didn't understand fully how this all worked, but he also had no concept of electrical force either. So I don't know why. Actually, the only reason why gravity is so popular is because it's such a mind. It's a mind cult kind of a situation is what's happening, and it's more about how foolish can you be if you're going to suddenly question something that all of us have already decided is true. It's it becomes the absurdity that keeps you in a frozen state of mind because you're too embarrassed to even consider that you could be wrong. To me, that's what's causing this to perpetuate. That's why people are still out there doing it. And when you could turn a number into a noun, which is what you're doing when you're turning gravity into a force to describe a mechanical action, something, well, here's how I'm just going to describe it to you on paper. Therefore, I need a force to show this math. That's how come special relativity became so popular. It was the ability to transmute what was on paper and getting someone to believe that that actually was happening in real life. This just happened 4 days ago. There's a dragon video going around on social media of a dragon that was found in a Korean stadium. And they're like, oh my God, they now have holograph technology in the sky. And they're showing this video of this dragon flying around a baseball stadium. But not one person who's seeing this video, they're like, oh gosh, it's over now. Project Bluebeam's here. But no one is looking at the video going, wait a minute, that's just, you only see that if you're looking at it through your camera. Like, it's only real if you're looking at it through your cell phone. So stop telling everyone this is a holographic technology. It's not. It's an augmented reality technology that's happening through your phone. But it's the exact same suspension of belief, that you're fooled into by signing up for Big G. And the best way to do that is to invoke a trance. And you can invoke a trance through trauma, or you can invoke a trance through confusion. That's why word salad is such an effective rhinoceros. See, I just threw a different word in that means nothing at all to what I was talking about, but that establishes a sort of a snap or a shock. And that shock introduces the brain into the possible suggestion that something else can happen. So when you start to scroll on the board, well, x minus 14 divided by L4 divided by 2.6 times 1 to the 16 millionth is only going to be derivative if you first calculated the centrifugal force of the quantum tangent as it relates to the quantum fluctuation, but only under a certain probability factor that only the speed of light can be determined, which is the actual shape in space. It's just all bullshit. But
did you see what I was doing earlier with the boys and those bloody asteroids? How did you know that?
It's a mantra, it's a mantra. And that's why asteroids are such an effective mantra, because the whole time in between all this math, you get to say it's what killed the dinosaurs. And now it's coming to kill us. This happens all the time. It's how fragile life really is. It's fragile, man. It's fragile. And so you just, you're just constantly in this state of, okay, I'm awake. I'm in your trance, but I'm also awake. I'm scared too. So it's such a, so bad when you watch what society calls smart people keep doing stuff like this.
There's got to be some mind control in there somewhere, hasn't there? Is this what you'd class as mind control, or maybe you could define mind control because you've written a book on it?
Yeah, mind control is emotional control. And I did, thank you. I wrote a book called Blueprints of Mind Control, and it's 47 stories that just illustrate different areas in life where mind control is something that's active and live. So imagine when you're going into a 13th grade, or as we call it, college. You've entered that sphere, and the moment you enter it, you are now no longer a blue collar. You are someone who's training for a white collar. You've been told that, well, if you go to college, you're going to get a better job, which literally means, hey, if you don't go to college, you're not going to have a good job. So it's a shaming of anyone who doesn't go to college. They're automatically feeling like, okay, they don't feel as well. And they're assigned a collar. They're considered blue collar now. But if you go to college, you're going to be white collar. And if you're white collar, you instantly enter an air where, well, wait, you got to sit up straight. You're a white collar. White collars have to carry themselves this way. They do the exact same thing in the Navy. You go into the boot camp, either you're going to be enlisted or you're going to be an officer. It's a different approach. It's a different kind of breakdown. You know, in the military, it's a trauma-based boot camp is your trauma. You're told instantly, you are not your hair, so they shave your head. You are not your clothes, so they take your clothes away. You are not your name. You are now your last name, you know, that's only 4 letters long or whatever. You are not all these things. You are not. And at the end of that, only after removing what is there emotionally can you repack something to replace it. And that's what college is doing. It's replacing the notion of you are no longer a standard blue collar guy. You are now a special classified white collar guy. So in order to feel classified, you're going to have to establish unity with your college. How do you establish unity? You go into a classroom and you give obedience. You pay for the privilege of giving obedience. And if your obedience is proper through regurgitation, because that's literally what a test is how many times have you learned, well, no, you have to answer what the professor wants, not what the truth is. It's an exercise in regurgitation, which is the exact same thing as a religious rite. You're completing a mantra successfully. This is like, you know, he read the Torah completely. He became a man when he was able to recite that. That's what the black robe of the graduation is all about. That's what the ritual of moving the tassel from one side to the other is about. You have regurgitated enough to earn the respect of everyone else who's regurgitated before you. That's a satanic pyramid. That's a chain of command. The exact same thing happens in the military as happens in academia. Once you enter a chain of command, then it becomes more about virtue, who's felt more as having the divine inspiration inside of them, meaning I'm really, really loyal to gravity right now. And I'm just so excited about these proofs of gravity and all these things that it can tell us about. So you're constantly being rewarded for sinking deeper into the cult. And more importantly, the ones that can come up with the visions, think about like the visions of Johanna, or think about Constantine, who he was losing his battle in Britain. And he wanted all his people to rise up, man. He needed some inspiration. So he looked up and he saw the divine cross, this P with a cross thing in it. And that symbol, he took it as a sigil. The point is that everyone was able to take his inspiration, his belief in gravity or whatever it is, and create a vortex of fame around that. Meaning anyone who also supports this symbol, the P cross, is also holy also. You were also endowed by this. Just as anyone who was to support special relativity would be considered a prodigy, a golden lighted child, someone like Stephen Hawking, someone who's supposed to die in 7 years due to his ALS diagnosis. But just as any prophet, he's able to perform a miracle and live for decades. So the entire time you're watching, well, God, if I would have believed in special relativity, I would be as powerful as Stephen Hawking right now.
And Einstein had his own sigil, didn't he, with E equals MC squared. And the way that was put on T-shirts and pummeled into you and is now sort of like a cult You know, Che Guevara figure of E equals MC. I know about E equals MC squared. I'm in the club.
Yeah, it's an individual sigil, a personality, a sigil that's been branded into a personality, which really is the birth of a prophet. So, you know, Elvis Presley was a prophet. Einstein was a prophet. John the Baptist was a prophet. All of these are messiahs that are able to deliver a salvation to a group of followers. So what does special relativity do? It delivers you a salvation. It delivers you from God. It delivers you into a world of relativity. And relativity is relativism. It is a philosophical mindset, which basically means imagine yourself inside of a gyroscope, but you're not on that outer layer, you know, where you can hold the gyroscope stationary and it's spinning on the inside. So a relativist is someone who joins into that. They physically attach themselves to what they think is stationary. And that stationary system is allowed to spin like freaking crazy. Meanwhile, the truth is outside of it, completely standing straight up. The relativist doesn't understand what absolute truth is. In fact, they're told absolute truth is a myth. And it's only through doing that can you introduce, through mind control, through cultural subversion, through shame and fame, this idea of actually poles are relative, and what you think is true is something that we can easily push. And we're going to push you simply by granting you a black robe. We're going to give you a scribed parchment that you hang on the wall. And this scribed parchment makes you an expert. An expert is that white collar wearing priesthood. It's no exception that a priest wears a white collar, and we call experts in the field white collar workers. These are the ones that we call experts. That's what the white voodoo robe of the doctor's all about too. So yeah,
What's this? What you mentioned earlier? This tassel thing on moving the tassel from left to right. When you, I haven't heard of that before. I never turned up to my graduation, but what's that all about?
Well, a lot of people say that's the cube of Saturn. You know, it's a black, black square, and that tassel would basically be. I'm sure I'm missing some symbolism here, but to me, it's physically taking a step. It's an initiation that's been invoked. In other words, you're only allowed to wear the tassel on this side. It's considered a faux pas to not do that until you cross the stage. Once you pass the threshold, now you move it from here to here, which means you officially are no longer looking at the world as a neophyte. You now are required to look at the world as an expert. And what that means is you're going to now be digging your own trenches for gravity. You're going to be digging your own trenches for vaccines. You're going to be digging your own trenches for a centralized federal government. You're going to be digging your own trenches for the actors that are rampant into pedophilia. The point is that whatever industry you're in, once you get into the mindset of an expert, really what that means is you're a loyalist. So an expert is a loyalist, someone who is loyal to that central archetype. And so it's really not even about their expertise. It's more about devotion. And that's really what shows you that academia is a religion.
Speaking of expertise, James, I feel I've done you a disservice. As I went back to prepare the video I'm going to put up of the show you were on Tuesday, I realized I really mangled your book name, and I do apologize. Let me tell people a bit more about you. You're an author of not just one, but two amazing books. The Spell of Six Dragons, and his latest book, Blueprints of Mind Control, accomplished artist, philosopher, outdoorsman extraordinaire, as you can hear, researcher, deep researcher, software engineer, produced solutions for Autodesk, Cisco, cure Autism Now, EMC, Stanford University, Sun Microsystems, VMware, and the Weather Channel. Some of his code was mentioned in Wired magazine. I dug around and found some of his cartoons, which I'm going to figure out a way to share with everybody here in a minute. I'll send them to you, Adam.
Maybe to me, Walter.
Or to you, if it's easier, whichever way. And amazing outdoor sculptures, created commissioned art installations, which we also want to look at, James, when you get a chance to share those in a minute. Wildlife volunteer rehabber up in the high countries of North Carolina.
And again, flat earther? Question mark, question mark.
I I will go down on the record saying I know that the Earth is bigger than we think it is. From a zeteticist, I see a flat Earth. That is what I picture. I also believe that there is one ground. There is one electrical ground. It's a universal electrical ground. If we didn't have a universal electrical ground, we would not be able to survive and live. We would not be able to perform alchemy. We are meat antennas, and our height is very important. What we get from standing off the ground, that a real ground is vital. It's really important. So I only clarify that because I'm really experimenting with the idea of like there being 7 levels, of sort of existence.
All about the layers, my friend.
Yeah,
I find that quite interesting. This week again, I've been delving into shortwave radio and hams and things like this. And I've got a friend over here who's ex-army radio operator, who's trying to get me into it, trying to explain it all. It's doing my head in, but for him, it's all about the length of the antenna. And it has to be an exact length or a certain length within a certain tolerance in order to be able to pick up the wave that you're trying to pick up. So for him, so for you to just mention the fact that we're 6 foot or between 5 and 6 foot high, that's something of significance, is it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Tesla, well, to be really quick, if Tesla was 5 feet tall, I don't think he would be Tesla. I think he would be getting different signals. I'm not saying worse. I'm just saying different, And it's interesting because if you look at what literally the string of a guitar is it's an antenna that's the exact length. It's got the exact length and tension required, which really tension is length, if you think about it, to produce that signal. Or to read it, by the way, because every antenna that we think is out there is actually a sender and a receiver.
Right.
We just don't really utilize that technology as much. I was in the Navy as a sub hunter, and I noticed a lot of inconsistency only after the fact. I wish I could tell you, yeah, man, I knew when I was 20 that it was totally flat, man. But no, that's not it. I was in my 20s, and they shaved my head. They took my name away. They told me, now you're just true now, and you're 3803, and you're this, and you're the yeoman, and you're this, and all this stuff, and you're going to learn how to hunt subs. So in the classroom every day, I was looking at maps, going, yeah, that all sounds good, but the whole time realizing only now in hindsight can I look back at that and go, that doesn't make any sense. Everything that we did in math was shown from a flat perspective, well, okay, but when it's time to hunt the sub, we're going to pretend like everything's flat. And the reason why is because, here's how the water works, or here's how current works, or here's whatever. So I've yet to find a science. I can't find one yet that's like, this only makes sense in a sphere, unless it's like mathematical bullshit. Like then you can find a lot of examples where, yeah, that would only work in a 5-dimensional reality. Is that what you're describing? And they're like, yes, it's because there's 10. And it turns into a mess then.
So a non-globularist for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I'd say flat. I don't like labels. It's sadly more of a personal pain in the ass quality of me, is that I'm always going to be like, well, wait a minute, let me clarify what I mean by that. So forgive me for that. Yeah.
Stationary plane always seems to is what I sort of say.
Yeah, stationary plane with a rotating ether. I do believe that the
Yes.
ether seems to be rotating around us while we remain stationary, and I find a really hard time, suggesting that it's otherwise, or that isn't the case.
Well, I think we are almost on the verge of demonstrating that. It was demonstrated 100 odd years ago, Sagnac, and now recently with the interferometer stuff, which I think there's a lot more to come. But I totally agree.
Yeah, I can go into this now if you want, but there's actually some interesting
Please.
things about the Star. Okay, I'm gonna wait.
Before we get on to some of the sub stuff, we move away from the mind control.
I know I didn't want to leave that either. I was just like trying to get it back, and then I see the art on the screen. James, we're gonna have to have you on for a month. It looks like.
There was a bit I wanted to kind of pick your brains on, really, James, with regards to this, and it occurs on some of the flat Earth debates. But I don't know if because you're better prepped than me to describe the asteroid with the moon. Maybe give
we're looking at.
Yeah. Oh. I thought it was a cupcake.
Well,
if there's a cupcake, then there's a new one. Maybe I think they used the almond next to the walnut in the cupcake. Hell, I don't know at this point, man. It's a new story every week. Truly, every week. There's a new asteroid coming this weekend. And I guess on the weekend that the big Peter Gate finally blows, or the big Federal Reserve finally crashes, or whatever finally happens when they pull that pin, that'll be the weekend when you won't be able to get your money out of your ATM. All right, I'm derailing it. My apologies.
Yeah,
but yeah, the asteroids are every week. I don't put 3 or 4 of the stories in. There's at least me and Josh double up on the stories. But currently, there's a walnut, and it's headed our way this weekend, and it has a moon.
When I wrote a story a few months ago, just in that 1 week, it happened to be about NASA. So I was actually counting all the stories that came in. And within like 3 or 4 days, because these are all exact happenings, they said a Mars rover landing, a solo hike across Antarctica, a private company was fined $1 million for launching their own satellite, and China landed on the far side of the moon, and Saturn's inner rings are now slowly melting. So that's like a lot of news, right? I mean, that's like 5 really colossal stories. I'm not talking about potpourri stuff. This is like really, really big stuff. And if you can look through our controllers, through the cipher of psychological warfare, and look at those 5 instances, all 5 of those have the exact same core in effect. And this will be no different than an ad agency sitting around a table going, you know what, we really need to push that it's okay to put mercury on your underarms because we really want to sell the rest of this deodorant. And it would only be there where around that table would you have a bunch of different people going, I got it. We'll take Paris Hilton. She'll put on her roller underarm deodorant, right? And then like Kate Spade will come up and she will lick the deodorant with her tongue. And then like there'll be all these different ideas that are pointed towards the exact same theme. And if you look at what happened during this 1 week, by the way, that week happened to be Christmas, okay? It was like roughly around Christmas when all this was happening. Think about what's happening with everyone's mind during the holidays. People are home, they're not at work, they're sitting around TV, they're open. They are open to suggestion. And that's why you see stories like this that are just constantly pushed, like over the top pushed, right at the same period of time, because they want you to get hit by all sides to where the last thing you can possibly even think about is turning around and going, hey, honey, do you think this stuff's bullshit? Like, that's just, it's not going to happen. There's too much at stake that's going on. And that's really why it's just so obvious that it's mind control. Keep in mind the entire time, if you were to doubt Ball Earth, the first thing you're going to lose is that it no longer rains diamonds on Neptune.
So that kind of
is now gone.
That kind of leads to the question, and that is, is this constant repetition of space lettuce, we call it, solely designed to keep us away? Because what we end up doing is, could that possibly orbit that? Could this do that? Is it solely designed as part of the mind control from us thinking, actually, you can't have a vacuum next to a pressurized system without a container? No. Is that the purpose of this, like you say, constant barrage of nonsense, fantasy made up and designed to provoke thought within that particular paradigm as opposed to outside of it with regards to reality? Do you understand? It keeps you locked in to their reality, the 1984 version of we give you your reality. You know what I mean? Is that constant barrage, that reinforcement, poorly summarized?
you're going to need two pillars to bring a sheep in, to bring a sheep home. And one of those pillars is going to have to be mean and evil and scary and terrifying. And the other pillar is going to have to be nice and warm and inviting and safe. And those pillars are Jakim and Boaz. These are the Masonic satanic pillars you see a lot of, where a lot of times a ritual is performed and there's a checkerboard in between. This is the Masonic circle where a spell is created. In fact, on the Masonic symbol, you'll see that at the top of these towers, on one side there's the sun, and on the other side there's the moon. Actually, some people call it, the sphere of lights. The idea is that if you can put people in between those towers, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter no one cares which tower they actually walk towards, just as long as they head in between those two. That's really the only goal of mind control. And that's actually why everything is so red and blue, or Democrat and Republican, or evil versus good, or Pepsi versus Coke. It's really important that you have those two divining rods, dowsing rods, in a way, like how you would find water, in a sense, because you're directing the current. It's almost like a reverse dowsing rod, because now you're directing the current rather than predicting where it's going to go. So you need fantastical stories about, we just took a picture of a black hole that's 500 million light years away, and the cute little girl who's 19 years old, who came from a small town in America, is the one who discovered it. Right? That's on your one side. And then on the other side, we've got an asteroid that looks like a giant hemorrhoid that's coming to destroy every single one of us, just like it did the dinosaurs, just like it's doing to the environment, just like it's doing to all your hopes, dreams, and plans. We need more money right now. So you've got both poles already built and already established. All you have to do is keep adding energy to both poles. So you come out and you push the idea of asteroids. That's what Graham Hancock does, literally every single day. Every single day that guy goes on social media, he posts a new photo of what looks like a Baby Ruth bar that's been floating around in a pool from Caddyshack. And he's telling everyone, this is the sacred asteroid that's coming to kill you next. Never, ever, ever does that guy go back 4 months ago and go, hey, by the way, on Uka Wuka Luka, that dude, I was totally wrong about that. Nor does Graham Hancock ever come back and tell everybody, hey, those star shafts in the pyramid that I told everybody point to the shafts of Orion, and that meant the whole thing was about space, and that really this is all about aliens. I forgot to mention that those star shafts actually bend. One of them makes 3 turns, the other one does a swoop. So why is starlight? Why would you build a channel that's directing at starlight and then decide to put three turns in it? Like, why would you build a structure to do that and then forget, oh yeah, I forgot it has to make 3 turns to get here? The fact that he's not coming back telling anyone this is part of how you charge that one pole. And this pole is that you are panspermia. You've been conceived from another galaxy, and that's what explains all this shit. Everything here came to be because you are the psychic cum of some thing from outer space that landed here on a comet that seeded this hole right here. You're constantly charging that the whole time,
And does it mean, sorry, the fact that they don't come, the fact that they don't come out and say, I was wrong about this, does that make them, are they part of the mind control? Are they active players in it? Because that's all I can see it pointing to, other than their ego or their book sales, or if they were to turn around and say, actually all the books I've written so far are bullshit, or judging by this new thing that's come to light. The fact,
like flat Earth, right?
Yeah, like flat Earth, exactly.
Yeah, like Mark Passio. Yeah, Mark Passio flips out when people start bringing up flat Earth, because he was around before flat Earth came up, and now he's a deacon, right, in the truth movement. And what happens? Not even an acolyte, not even someone who's an acolyte, a congregationist comes in who's been there 3 weeks. They haven't given any donation, right? They just came into the Church of Truth and they raise their hand and they say, I think the Earth's flat. And what is Passio's reaction? I mean, this shows you how it's mind control. And I mean this as respect to Mark Passio. I think his work on natural law is freaking phenomenal. I'm not here to say we shouldn't support Mark Passio. I have. You know, I've written him letters telling him how great he is. And so this is not me bashing Mark Passio. I hope that people can understand that when you see someone like Mark Passio, who has that much command over his own sovereignty, fall so hard into the trap of mind control to react in such a way. Like, I'll read it to you here. Actually, let me share this.
Yeah, go for it. But there's so many others as well. You know, Max Egan, who is so awake and yet and talks about psychopathy, and Sheridan, Molyneux, Larkin Rose. All these people are so aware of this stuff, and yet they've been blindsided by flat Earth purely because of exactly what you're describing. But yeah,
everyone, and all of them, and keep in mind that all of them are deacons. In other words, they've been here for a while. I'm not slamming any of them. All of them have been here for a while, though. Okay, and when you've been here for a while, it's going to be difficult. I ran into this when a friend told me about convex Earth. What I mean by that is when he said that, I felt the emotional, like, what are you freaking talking about? Like, I just instantly, I didn't want to hear about it. I had to think, and what I found it enlightening, because I was able to catch myself going, wow, James, look at that. Like, here you are doing the same thing. And that's why I've got this Mark Passio quote up here where he's telling people all flat earth related comments will be immediately deleted from my Facebook page. The poster will be permanently blocked. I will not allow my personal Facebook page to be used as a forum to spread provably false PSYOP disinformation, which does colossal harm to the genuine research community by making researchers look stupid and ridiculous by association with it. He goes on to say, if you believe in the flat earth religion, get the F off my Facebook page and friend list. You are not a friend, you are a vermin. I'm leaving out some words here. Your parenting was so bad that your low-life parents didn't even make sure you received a decent education. Keep in mind, he said decent education, right? In basic mathematics and geometry. Take your BS elsewhere, vermin. 200 comments, 97 shares, about 700 likes, okay? This is prime evil mind control. You can see his anger, right? You see it. And what are you literally doing to Mark when you're walking in telling him the earth is flat? You're literally telling him that the pillars that you are standing on, Mark, are not valid. And that is going to scare the shit out of anybody, not just Mark Passio. It's going to scare the crap out of me. It's going to scare the crap out of my parents. It's going to scare the crap out of all the sheep out there anytime anything true starts to slip in where they're not able to handle it. And there's only so much that the words conspiracy theory can do as a dam. That's literally a psychic dam that was built up by the CIA during the Magic Bullet days, where all it took was just saying, well, it was a magic bullet. That's what killed Kennedy. Like, that's all it takes. They built a shoreline.
Every time that picture, the cartoon of the surprise witness hitting the stand, every time that went by, I kept thinking, I bet that is the image that passes through Mark's head every time he gets to a certain point with flat Earth, or anyone who sees the bigger picture that it all kind of leads to. And it's like, oh shit, well, I surely can't go down this path, let alone having to dispense with this great ego of intelligence that I've built up over.
Yeah. And I also think that because Mark had a history in Satanism, it's an extra burn for him because it leads you back to a creationist. It's really kind of hard not to look at it. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a creationist, but I'm just saying, guys, it's really difficult to look at all these different elements in nature and not say, well, you know, that was designed. I mean, if you watch a motor protein, you know, chugging its way up an amino chain, it is, I mean, it's not only is it hilarious, but you're kind of brought to tears the first time you see it, because you're like, wow, like this is really, there's like, you know, there's,
we had this conversation a couple weeks ago.
That's why I laughed, Adam.
Yeah, there's 3 billion blood cells, and we literally have consciousness inside of all of those. And to keep coming back to this idea of again, panspermia, of Graham Hancock, of this psychic comet that's, the pornographic comet that came in and gave all this stuff. And then if you just follow the story of evolution, and the whole time you're having to, not once do we ever teach fraud in school. Not once does anyone ever sit down and be told, hey, let me tell you about the Piltdown Man. This is hilarious. So these guys found a bone, and it was like, I forget if Piltdown was like a hog or something, but it was like a jawbone of a pig. And then they found the rest of a skull. And two guys said, hey, if you take some glue, I can make a lot of people believe that's a missing link. And Piltdown Man's not even like a strange rarity. Like there's a lot of those stories of Piltdown Man. I mean, they're all through
I
history.
guess I was lucky, or I had the right teachers, because man, I remember learning about that, the Cardiff Giant, a lot of the hoaxes that were historically trying to, perpetrate some new myth. Little did we know that as we were studying dinosaurs, that it was the same story there. But yeah, I don't know. I also did a lot of reading as a in school, so I probably maybe came across those things, maybe, and brought them up. I don't know, but I remember the discussions for sure. The Cardiff Giant.
That's. I was just going to say the point. You may be lucky enough to get education where some of the.
But most people aren't. I realize
but the point is they're constantly reinforcing with new ones. So you said those few. You've got. But my one when I was a kid was Lucy, the Australopithecine. So they use nice big words, so it all sounds more silent and true. But they're giving you a new one that's during the Jurassic Park era, isn't it? So let's use all that kind of new science that people are getting familiar with, and it's just a reinforcement for that generation. So underminement of previous generations' paradigms, which may look dated and have holes in, they're rebuilding again and again for each new generation.
And that's the purpose of the Messiah. That's, and I hope everyone understands what I mean by Messiah there. Like back in Roman times, there were a lot of Messiahs. It was a common thing for there to be someone who they would call, that dude's a Messiah of rollerblading, or there's the Messiah of the banjo. Like these are people that were innovating and were allowing a new direction to emerge into either a state of belief or whatever. That's why you can look at Einstein and understand that he was a Messiah of relativity. Even though he was propped up, he still was able to create a new space where a bunch of black magicians could crawl into with him and go, oh man, we can milk the crap out of this. And look how much they're milking it. I mean, if you look at every single thing that happened within 50 years, but between 1905, when special relativity came out, and 1958 was just a colossal mind rape over literally every single person, at least in America, because that's when Rockefeller started the General Board of Education. I mean, this guy was literally going around to coal mines. He murdered, like, he didn't personally do it, but 66 coal miners were murdered that were striking in Colorado. This guy doesn't stand trial. No one stands trial in the Rockefeller family. Nobody.
That's the same year he paid off the scientists and all that at the Geneva, and
he did so much. Even before the Civil War, Walt, even before the Civil War, 2 years before the Civil War, someone put the bug in his ear. Hey man, start a produce supply business and start an oil supply business. Then he does. And what happens next? Now there's an embargo by the Illuminati, basically, or the Masons, or the secret society that was infiltrated in America at that time, whatever you want to call them. Okay. They were coming in saying, this is what's going to happen. There's going to be an 8,000% markup. 8,000% on oil once this war starts. It's going to be an embargo, and we're going to be forced to buy, so you were going to be the golden child in this new situation. So coming through from the moment he was born, from the moment his father was born, who actually, I think he raped someone at gunpoint, someone who worked in his staff, another one of his staff, like, had their bastard child through him. He ended up having to move to Canada. He was like a real bad dude. The idea of this trauma gets installed in this person. And some people, the secret society, are able to use him as an instrument to create Standard Oil. And literally, Standard Oil was the first constricted because that's how they always control, is they constrict something, whether it be truth, whether it be oil, whether it be carbon dioxide, whatever it is that they want to try, they're going to claim to constrict that. And that's how they're going to extract information from it. That's how they're going to extract energy from it. I'm sorry. So his entire birth, even up through when they were trust busting, when they apparently trust busted Rockefeller, when they busted up his trust for Standard Oil, he became the most wealthy American in the history of our country. So this wasn't anyone that was like beating him down, like, oh, I'm going to show you, John Rockefeller. It was just a constant, no matter what you do, we are going to make sure that you are on top of things. Personally, I believe that that has something to do with traumatic mind control. We make puppets and we install them in certain places. That's where I think probably most of our leaders are. It's probably safer to look at all the leaders as almost like maitre d's rather than like owners of the restaurant. So, they legitimately do have power, but they also are fitting into a larger system that we're just not privy to. No different than someone who's in 7th grade right now. They're not privy to flat Earth. They're stuck in a system where everything's a ball. They're going to be there until someone breaks them out, or if they're lucky enough themselves.
That's what I was going to ask, James. Is that we're all? I don't think there's anyone alive at the moment that hasn't undergone intense mind control from the day we were born, basically, to the present day. You look a similar sort of age to most of the panel here, and we're sort of seeing the mid-40s, a prevalence of the mid-40s. Hold on, Adam. But there are younger people as well, and older people as well. But I'm seeing a large band in the middle that is around about our age group. Was this something that happened that made us capable of breaking this mind control?
In my opinion, I think mind control is mostly broken through pain. I think the best way to solve mind control is to get hurt. And if you get hurt enough, you're going to stop trusting. You're going to stop trusting blindly. But actually, trust is a misnomer. You're going to stop extracting consent. Go ahead, Walt.
Well, it just seems, as I've looked over some of the things that traumatized me growing up, it always was related to a leader, a musician, someone that I cared about deeply. And when I say, fucked my head up when Lennon died, fucked my head up when I thought Mandela died the first time around. We won't get into that, but just the idea that they maybe were pushing the edge, that edge of how much can we inflict in a public format on TV, that now there is that big gap, that group like you're talking about, John, where we all kind of have had so much that then boom, a wreck, or boom, or whatever. And now it's like, oh shit, I'm awake too much. What happened?
Well, I think James has hit the nail on the head there about it being pain or trauma or something along those lines. I mean, I always put down to my skepticism of sort of being mistreated by the police age 13 and stuff, and having, being arrested as an 18-year-old and our house busted in at 7 o'clock in the morning, which you're not allowed to do to a 13-year-old, and then being led around and then going through some court systems and this sort of thing. It just destroyed all my faith in, and the schooling system as well. Just having a maths teacher out of spite saying, putting me in for the maths GCSE exam that I could only get a C in, when he knew that I was probably the best at maths in the group. And it was just things like that. Everything broke down the education system. My dad was a doctor, and yet had a stroke at 55. What sort of doctor has a stroke? You know what I mean? It's like going to a nutritionalist who's 28 stone. It's like it just does. All your faith is broken down in the police, the judiciary, the medical system, everything. And what else is there to believe in? And that's when you turn to knowledge rather than belief, I think.
Can I offer maybe a differing opinion? Because I think we're all in this sort of the same boat. That yeah, we've all had to suffer this trauma, but we've also been allowed to sort of process it, or had to put ourselves in a position where we could process that trauma on our own, as opposed to being told how to process it or not being allowed to process it at all. I think that deep down in us, we've always questioned these things. I know that's true for a lot of these panels. And James, I can't help but suspect that somewhere deep down in part of you, you knew that the grain with which you were going wasn't the right one, but you didn't know how to go against it. You knew that there was a conflict there, and you wanted to ask questions, but you didn't know how, you didn't know which questions to ask, and you just had to learn to go along to get along. But I think that John might be right, that there's something maybe generational that almost seems to have happened to this generation, where we are somehow predisposed to question programming.
I'd also like to add, and then we'll pass it over to James, but I think it's something in our generation is that we were I'm talking from the UK, we were the ones that went through the rave scene, or the highlights of the 80s and the rave scene. We were also the ones that were the last to experience a pub that you could go in and smoke in and socialize with whoever, from the MD to the janitor, in a situation. And all of that's changed in the UK now. You cannot go to a pub without taking a second mortgage. You certainly can't smoke in there. There is no, we're the sort of last of the generation that were privileged enough to play those areas.
Rituals or something that we shared, John. Trying to put a name to it, I guess.
Yeah, it's difficult to put a finger on it, but James, fill us in, mate. What do you think?
Well, I think you could definitely point to society. I would think that internet has probably been the biggest thing that's caused anyone to wake up, more so than, say, what anyone particularly went through, or say like a certain generation. I think just having access to more information has made it easier for someone who's fallen off the wagon to find solace off the wagon. Because before the internet, if you fell off the wagon, you simply felt like you were crazy. That's all. You just felt like you were an outcast, and you weren't able to survive. You weren't even able to function. But now in today's world, outcasts can still connect, and thanks to that, once outcasts can connect, you create an island for ideas, and those ideas are literally a mirage for people that are trapped in the desert. As you're wandering through the desert, because you're surrounded by lies, there's literally so much dissonance that if it wasn't for these mirages, we wouldn't be able to crawl into them, on our hands and knees, find a little bit of solace, and look over and see someone else who's also on their hands and knees, just desperate, clinging to it also. If you do that enough, you start to understand what truth feels like. Because I think we feel truth in our body. I don't just mean this like in a hooty-gooey kind of way. There's something about our bones that resonates when we hear truth. But when we're surrounded by lies our entire life, and when we're living lies, this is the big one. When we're living lies, we store lies in our posture, just as we store truth in our posture. And if you come back to the idea of your spine being an antenna, you're crooking your antenna by thinking that you are a pond scum. You're more in the shape of a question mark. Whereas if you understand, no, I'm created by God, you are standing more erect. Your signal is clear.
The entire 20th century.
Sorry, that's awkward.
Oh, okay, I thought someone was jumping in because I don't mean to talk too much.
Well, I wouldn't mind jumping in just before we go too far off that. But we've covered a load of topics there in terms of mind control and kind of making yourself probably more susceptible to being aware of it. And psychedelics is one thing, because that does expand the mind and ways of thinking. But there was a thought when you was talking earlier in terms of some of the, I think the MK Ultra kids weren't having cannabis direct, but I think they were having hemp seed in some form of nutrition, and the ingestion of that kind of triggered a breaking in the mind control that they've been subjected. Now, obviously, not as severe as that, but obviously potency is kind of the inverse relationship in terms of the mind control. I just wondered whether the availability of marijuana, and particularly maybe that's a much more hidden reason, as opposed to its potential negative effects, that actually the real reason it's been demonized so much is because of its strange ability to reduce the brain's capacity for mind control.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think all mind control is a trance built on comfort. So once someone's in any trance, whether that be a trance of pain or abuse or of joy and elation, as long as you can maintain a state, you can create a feigned comfort, which is what literally locks someone into mind control. Cannabis, I might lose some of you guys here, and that's okay. But cannabis is a living entity. She's a female, in my opinion. She wraps her hand around the back of your skull and kind of grabs you from like here and here, like you can feel it when she grabs you. And her job is to guide what you're looking at and where your presence is. You become a puppet in her hands, and it's beautiful. And the reason why I think people fall out of mind control is because you're falling into sativa control or cannabis control. You are becoming one of her beloved. Cannabis is a very jealous entity, a very jealous ally. If anyone reads Carlos Castaneda, it's very much she's an ally. And so she's going to have her own trance that she can put you under. And that's why mostly what cannabis does when you first smoke it is she gives you full awareness, and then she gives you comfort in that. And that's why feeling high feels so good, because your awareness is peaked. That's and this is really what, well, I don't want to get off track, but this is really what life's all about, really, is awareness, about what our percentage of awareness is. So if you're living at 33% awareness and you take cannabis, she's going to bump that up to 46% awareness, and then she's going to hold you there. And that's how you mind control someone. You give someone a comfort level, then you maintain it, and then they become addicted to that level. They naturally just want to sit there. That's
Josh,
why no one wants to turn around and say, I don't believe that the earth is round anymore. That's why it's so hard, because it's uncomfortable. And that's really what we are. We're a bunch of animals living inside of a comfort zone, and we stay there as long as we can.
Are you saying it lifts
Bryce
the...
Taylor? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did John just say my name, or am I going a little crazy?
Josh, I was just wondering why you were enjoying that, and I wondered whether you had a comment, because you're sitting there laughing your head off. And
my comment was going to be, Walt is taking this information as in about the same way I was. Just the the elation of hearing him put into words just sort of this idea of the cannabis being a female, and just the way she cradles your head and helps guide your perception. It really hit home.
And the jealous mistress and the whole thing, dude. It was beautiful. Please write that down somewhere. That was amazing. And as you say, that level that you achieve, and then it's like, okay, now what? Then it's like, okay, I'm just stoning out. So what's the point anymore? I need to figure out where that awareness was. And yeah, it's something you have to, or at least I know I have wrestled with it.
Well, she needs you. She need humans. We are so important. Humans are so freaking important. Trees feed off of our awareness. Cannabis feeds off of our awareness. The soil feeds off of our awareness. It's literally what our purpose here is. We are put here to be a portable battery awareness unit for everything else that's all around us. That's why we're so wired for mammalian tendencies of empathy and of feeling. And if you want to believe that bullshit evolution story, this idea that, oh, socialization is the only way we would survive, that's not true. I can mention many predators. Most of the apex predators hunt solo. It's just one person. So it's bullshit to say that evolution proves that you must be social in order to survive. It's absolutely not true. Literally the opposite of that is the case. Instead, we're here as empathic computers because we're supposed to be using it. We have telepathy through facial recognition. If you were to put an fMRI, a functional, MRI on both of us at the same time, and if I was to watch a horrible car accident, you would feel that instantly. And I don't just mean this like, oh, it's sort of like that way. You would light up the exact same way in your brain as I would light up as I'm experiencing that.
When you said what you said moments ago, I felt it, and I truly connected on it, and it literally brought tears to my eyes. So it doesn't necessarily require that technology interface.
Well, our voice is the exact same thing. What we're doing is we're creating an asynchronous connection with our body. That's why humans are so important. Not only do we have it with our voice, which is colossally important to magic and alchemy, what you sound, what you say, the resonance of what you do, but also our body language and how we pick up on each other. This is literally telepathy that's happening. When you're seeing someone else, when you're hearing someone else's voice, you're actually just participating in telepathy. You're ingesting their ideas. They're coming in small packets, in really small words. I love you. Like, I love you. It's such a short amount of data, but the amount of information that's packed into there is going to be completely different for all 5 of you or all 4 of you as you're listening to me. Same for my audience versus someone that knows me personally. They just heard me say that. It's going to have this whole other layer that's built into it. This telepathy we miss all the time because we're under the impression that everything's about language. But language is just a sigil. It's literally an archetypal sigil that when you see that sigil, it activates your mind and you explode as if you've just taken a capsule of empathy, like a capsule of meaning that can be encoded into a word and sent to someone else. That's why they control compulsory education. They have to be the ones that charge the sigils. If they don't charge the sigils, they can't insert the proper tone. We are tuning forks. We take a tone through compulsory education or through abuse from our parents or through golden child, scapegoat programming from society, or meeting a sociopathic lover and having them tear our heart out. All these things are instances where we take a vibration, it's repeated enough to where we store that vibration and we develop a trance in it, a certain comfort, and then we're ready to leave. Keep in mind, comfort just means I don't have fear right now. So, you can be in comfort in shock. You can be in comfort in a lot of different things. So this isn't about being a sloth. This isn't about, oh, everyone's too lazy. That's not it at all. This is why trauma programming is so effective. It's why they shoot schools up and not malls.
So can I try and conclude on that, on the sort of there's a whole PhD here really on looking at our generation and stuff. So we've sort of identified the internet, drugs, pain, cannabis, and also with our generation, the knowing what it was like before most of those things. We lived before the internet, and pubs and things like this that are dead now. Can you tick all the boxes above, or what was it for you, James, that made you wake up? But I can see from the background you're an artistic, you're musical, you're you're an author, you draw cartoons, this sort of thing. What was it for you? Is there something you can put a finger on that made you wake up, or at least be a skeptic?
I've always asked my whole life. I've always asked questions. I think all of us have. I maybe I'm a little bit autistic because I've never had the governor on me to be like, whoa, don't say that. Like I tend to be more like, oh, well, yeah, this sounds like a good question. Hey, can we talk about how this looks like a blood oath to your church? Can we talk about that? It's like, oh, Lucifer is speaking, and it's constantly, it's a little bit of luck in the sense of that there's some naivete that I've always had when it comes to certain social situations. I think it's because I've always been programmed to feel intimacy with someone through truth. So like I actually look for someone to kind of be, hey, dude, you've got spinach in your teeth. Like I know that person cares about me,
Would you say you're inappropriate This is how
Yeah.
I describe myself. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yes.
when something pops into your mind, it's just like,
Right.
I know it's inappropriate, but I don't care because I'm just going to say it because no one else is going to, and it might
Yeah.
spark an interesting conversation.
Most of the time I don't know it's inappropriate. Like I've realized it is after I've said it. It's only through someone else's reaction that I'm like, oh, I thought we were allowed to just be unfiltered. It's not to be gross, but I thought we were allowed to fart in front of each other. Like I thought it was okay if we accidentally, you know, burped or whatever. To me, I felt like that's how you breed intimacy, is that you create an asynchronous channel where the other person's just allowed to go, you know, and you're allowed to go too. There's not this, what should I send out this packet? You know, you look nice today, and I'm not going to send out this packet, you know, and it's, who wants to live like that? I've always desired connection. I've always literally just desperately craved connection.
But also the more truthful this is my experience, the more truthful I am towards someone, the more truthful they are back to me. So, you know, if I tell them about my hemorrhoids and what the hell was going on and this sort of thing, then they're likely to tell me about their whatever affliction and be as open.
You're so right, John. And I think that's how human conversations are supposed to happen. But when you enter into a psychopathic world where sociopaths are turned every day, and there's also some psychopaths out there that have already been turned before they were born, that you end up with situations where you might be raised by someone like that, or you might have a teacher who's someone like that, and they physically just cannot handle you breaching the etiquette of virtue that they want to maintain between the two.
Or it's taken as a weakness.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
And because they think, he's saying this, therefore he's weak, or I'm going to jump on him and point out his weakness. And it's like, no, you're a fool, because I told you my weakness. Therefore, you know, it's like a dog lying down and submitting. And then, you know, being attacked in the throat. It's like,
exactly. Yeah. It's having your attacker, instead of you defending yourself, instead you're just telling your attacker, hey, here's how you're hurting me. Like you're giving them more information. You're just like, I'm going to find your empathy no matter how hard I try. And luckily for me, that's what broke me, is because I would meet people in life that I felt like I could extract, I could unhook that latch, you know, I could extract this blockage that was stopping the empathy from coming through. It's part of being a wizard or an alchemist, you know. Growing up, I didn't want to see magic go away. I was mentally depressed when my ego was congealing, and I started to notice that I wasn't able to pretend in the same amount of time frame as I was, you know, before, where I could just go outside and just become an X-wing TIE fighter flying through the trees. And then the next day I would go out, and as soon as a car would drive by, I would stop being a TIE fighter, and I would become maybe a child that's too old to be playing TIE fighter all of a sudden. Like it's this constant pushing back of your own intimacy with your own power of imagination, with your own tap into magic and alchemy. And so I've always tried to rebirth that. I'm getting too complicated, sorry, but I've always tried to push that up around me. Like I've always tried to inspire magic in other people, just so I want to live in this trance where magic is real, where transmutational, you know, where empathy is real, where all these things are real. So
no, I see where you're coming from. I see it as a process of trying to break down the other person's ego by breaking your own ego in front of them. So everyone's macho, they're on a building site, and it's all, I've got a big cock, you've got a small dick, all this sort of stuff. And it's a case of being honest to a point where they are like, oh, well, he's being honest, so I can be honest back. And then you strike a rapport, and you raise that bar of the relationship between these two people, insofar as that you're breaking down the pretenses, you're getting rid of the walls of armor around you, and you're getting to the actual person beneath. And I think it's fascinating stuff.
You know, during a parlay, the pirate will unarm, they will approach the parlay without arms. That's part of the agreement. I want to have a connection with you, and the only way I can have a connection with you is to be vulnerable with you. And so that's where you end up having. That's why vulnerability is so important, and it's also why the mind control is so specific against that. It's very, very specific against the idea that vulnerability is allowed or accepted or rewarded. That's the biggie, is that because it's not rewarded, no one really thinks to use that a lot unless you're just a natural person that just uses it, and can't help it. So
James, sorry to hog you, mate, but when did you develop these ideas? How is it something you've always had with you? I mean, the reason I ask is because I've never been in a fight, and this is probably what I consider the reason why, is because of the empathy and the being able to put yourself into someone else's eyes, shoes, whatever, and see how you can. I mean, I say I've never been in a fight. I've never been in a physical fight. Plenty of other verbal fights, but are you the same, or is this something that you were beaten up as a child and you became you learned this?
Hold on, never been in a fight ever. Oh, just sorry, James, but never been in a fight ever.
Is
that true for
my
anyone
last fight
else?
was 6th grade. My last fist fight was in 6th grade, and I remember feeling really bad, like, man, I hope I didn't hurt him. And I didn't, because the whole time I was like, I don't want to hurt you. I just really like this girl named Beth, and we're having
But Adam's been in punch-ups every Friday night and at the football matches and everything else. What's your story, Adam?
I've been in for a long time.
How long? When was the last punch-up you had?
Years ago. Yeah, Christmas do. Probably about 5 years ago, but then I'm not many. I was just surprised. I'm just surprised. Never ever. That's just
only because I'm so punchy when you can't see my face or know where I live.
My mates used to just punch each other. Used to have a game at uni. Sit there. Someone would start it, just do a little jab in the. Then it would just escalate to a point. Fighting never, my granddad was a boxer, wasn't he? So it was never anything to. I'm just shocked, mate. You've never even had a little fight at school, all right? Or you just too fast to runner, or.
I don't like pain. I don't see the point.
I never started a fight, but fights sometimes end up happening. Somebody attacks, don't they? With your tongue, I'd have thought you're more likely to get attacked.
Well, I suppose I took pride in seeing that attack coming before it actually did, and fending it off either with humor or, like I say, destroying my ego in front of their ego in order to find some sort of level ground to park on. What James, what are your experiences on this?
That was always my tactic. But again, I was always noticing after the fact, wow, is like brutal. That guy's really mad at what I just said, And
that's what get me in trouble, James. Would be I wouldn't be I'd just speak the truth and honestly, and unlike John, I probably wasn't premeditating about situations, just being honest, and that often got me in. You know what I mean?
There's actually been a few times where in high school where I should have fought, but I didn't. And I think it would have made me a better person to have actually chosen to fight. But I was already programmed in the idea that that's not acceptable to defend yourself physically. That has a lot to do with my own empathy levels and things like that. So, but I think that's also bred into us. We're constantly being bred to be as passive as possible.
But saying that, in my imagination, I've defended myself to the death, but I've never been in the situation where I've had to use physical force or violence to defend myself. But no, Adam, I like I said, I'm inappropriate. I say the wrong things at the wrong time to the wrong people, and then I backpedal as hard as I fucking can to not be head butted or beaten up, basically. But yeah, I'm lucky. I mean, I might get in a fight tomorrow, who knows.
It's funny, I've always been pretty quick-witted and sharp-tongued myself. Even I remember being a little kid, it was always one of those like party tricks that friends would have me do, is just go around and have a conversation and see how many times I could insult them with what they say with their own words. So it's one of those weird little things. I've always just been able to have sort of a clarity of thought. And I remember being having my brain being more advanced than my age, if that makes any sense. I remember not being able to have my hands do the things that my brain could imagine. I just didn't have the coordination. It's like my brain was 5 years old the minute I was born. I was always having thoughts that seemed older than the thoughts I should be having as a baby. Like I can remember being in a crib and thinking, listening to the motorcycle shift gears outside my bedroom window. I can see the mobile hanging from the ceiling. I'm in my crib thinking about the neighbor going through the gears in his motor. How the fuck would I know about a motorcycle? How the fuck would I know about gears on a motorcycle? Lying in a crib looking at my mobile. No idea why. But I've always sort of had that older brain, older soul stuck in a young person's body. And I've always kind of maintained that clarity of thought. And as I could learn to vocalize and externalize some of that wisdom inherent that I was born with, that I can sort of just remember being able to not grasp but still feel, makes me wonder if that's the sort of thing that's helping the generations break out of this programming. They are bringing back with them into this life lessons that they learned previously. So we're harder to fool now. We don't buy the same BS that they're telling everybody else. But that's just a little woo-woo. Things been running through my brain listening. Sorry.
Like it.
Yeah, epigenetically, not only can trauma be passed down, but wisdom can too. And so it would make sense that
Yes,
we would be getting wiser. Hopefully.
And what a great design for a creation.
Yeah, I know, right? It's awesome. It's literally a hard drive, then you can transfer data to your generation. That's why ancestors are so important. That's why blocking our history out actually is so important to them. That's why when you think the word bloodline, a lot of people only picture, well, there's probably like 13 bloodlines in the world. No. Bloodline. Like you have a bloodline. I have a bloodline. It is freaking powerful, man. My bloodline I can tap into and I can talk to people none of you fuckers can talk to because they're in my bloodline and they know stuff, man. They learn stuff, They made some bad mistakes too. And some of that trimmer, those trimmers are in there too. And so I will have the exact same aversion as the, Machiko, the ultimate ancient Egyptian dude that was afraid of an ass snake. I might still have that fear in me too because I didn't resolve that. But literally everything that happened until then is right here.
So can I just clarify, like you were saying, that wisdom can be passed on? From what I'm seeing, the people that lead us, lead our countries, the world leaders, the presidents, all those numpties, the UN, etc., they seem to make the same, deliberately, obviously, but by design, the same mistakes again and again and again. They don't seem to be getting any wiser. If anything, they're getting more dumb. But is what you're saying is that us as the masses are generationally getting wiser and wiser to these assholes that are purporting to run our world. Is that it? We're, as a collective, we're getting wiser to what they're up to. Because I don't see wisdom. I don't see wisdom around me much at all in our leadership, but I do see it around me in the people, the common day people that I interact with and see.
Yeah, it's getting to be a problem for the leaders because the sheep are, it's not everybody, because some sheep are turning worse and some sheep are turning better. as different people, I think, get wiser, then that epigenetically comes down, and it becomes harder to establish the same propaganda to keep that person in check. But when it comes to world leaders, this is why I go back to saying countries aren't what we think they are. What we're calling world leaders are actually more like maitre d's. And it's a really tough pill to swallow, because you really have to unwrap and really look at world history completely different. And that's why the ISS, the ISS is attached into that, because you have multinational corporations. I'm sorry, you have countries that are pretending to all believe in the same thing, this ISS. And this is one of the systems that you do to install honor among thieves. You need some way of, the only way that psychopaths can trust each other is through blackmail. So you have a system like the ISS in which everyone is having to participate in the same lie in a way that sort of creates a failsafe where they can all trust each other. And sometimes that failsafe is challenged or broken. It happened last summer when there's two dates I'd really like you guys to hear this about. So you guys, obviously most of us know the ISS is probably filmed partially in a pool, partially on a parabolic plane, definitely in a studio. There's definitely heavy augmented reality that are pieced into everything they do. We've got people that are fading off the sides. It's a $56 million a day budget to basically create a feature film every day, and they still do a terrible job. But the point is that here they are doing it. But it's multinational. So you've got Russia involved. You've got Italy involved. So now you have different maitre d's. You've got the same food court maybe that's owned, but you've got these different maitre d's that are competing. So there is some autonomy with countries, but it's no more autonomous than, say, two waiters that are competing for that next aid top to come in. And I think it starts to slip out because on July 16th, 2013, this is the anniversary of Apollo 11 launch, okay? So on that anniversary, on the ISS, where there's space bubbles, right? Where there's water bubbles being seen, where pretty much most of what they're doing is being filmed in Texas inside an underground pool. So on that day, you've got an Italian astronaut that's claiming that while on a spacewalk, on the day of Apollo landing launching, he comes out and they produce a press release that says he almost drowned, okay? And he almost drowned while he was out walking in space. Now, if this just happened once, I could hear you saying, James, you're reaching, that's not, doesn't mean anything. It's just a coincidence, right? I mean, there's only like maybe 5 anniversaries that are this big, like the Apollo 11 landing or landing on Mars or whatever. So, 5 out of 365, it could happen. But then on August 20th, this was last year, this is the anniversary of NASA landing on Mars. Russian astronauts said, we found sea plankton on the windows of the ISS. I'm not talking about the inside of the windows, guys. I'm talking about they were outside the ISS and they're cleaning, they're doing whatever they're supposedly doing up there. And they find sea plankton on the outside of the windows in the vacuum of space. Now, this is the Russians that said that, okay? So these are 2 different dates. Now, what's important about that day? What happened on August 20th? That was when NASA landed on Mars. So the landing on the moon, or the launch of the moon, and landing on Mars were both opportunities where 2 different countries were able to stick out. It's almost like showing a photograph of your ass. Do you see what I'm saying? Where they were showing a picture for the entire world to see that says, maybe I'm going to disclose this, NASA. Maybe America, maybe I'm going to go ahead and just tell the world that you're full of it. That creates, what does that do? That creates a blackmail vacuum, right? Where you start to negotiate. So now Italy has a negotiating card on America, but America wanted Italy in on the lie anyway, because they want to have that same negotiating card over us.
This really reminds me of a documentary I watched a couple of days ago or yesterday, called, I think it was called Houston, We Have a Problem.
Mm-hmm.
And have you seen that with the Polish, and was it the Polish? Someone help me out. They had their own space program of Tito. And they had their own space program and they sold it to the Americans, and it even showed sort of
Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia. That's right. Thank you. And it was showing Tito watching the moon landings and sort of chuckling to himself with his wife because he'd sold them all the technology to do this. If anyone hasn't seen that film, it's I think it's only just come out, but it's a real eye opener. No one ever knew, as far as I know, I didn't know about the Yugoslavian space program and how they sold it to the Americans and paid for it again and again and again by the destruction of their country. But yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, it's a great example because it shows how different states can step up to the plate and become a multinational player the exact same way that different psychopaths individuals can do it, i.e. send in Elon Musk. Now you have someone who is ready to step into the world of elite, and that means you're going to have to create a big lie. This is what Al Gore did with his program about shaming everyone for carbon and our carbon footprint.
For breathing and plants for being plants. And
yeah, you're stepping onto the world stage and you're exposing yourself. Why? Because now you're participating in the lie, right? So that's like your dues into the secret society. What happens when you enter a secret society? You take your clothes off, you get in a coffin with blindfolded, and you talk about how you masturbated all through your life. And then they record all that shit. And then that's what they hold it on you. But why do they do that? Why do they do that? It's because they need exposure. They will not trust you until they can expose you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, is this why?
That's what the ISS is. It's that coffin.
Sorry, is this why we've seen recently, like Israel with their moon probe and China landing on the moon? India's got their own space program. It's all of them basically sticking their hand in the pot saying, we're in on it. That's cool.
And there's another important piece of this because you might be looking at that going, well, James, why would America even do that to begin with? Like, why would they expose themselves in such a dangerous way? It's a really good question if you think about it. I mean, it would be so easy to figure out that it's a lie. And if you weren't able to figure it out, it would be colossally damaging for the power of government. So why would they push that so much? Why would they push that so hard, knowing that it could be exposed at any time? And that's the key, guys. That's the secret to understanding. Because when you see just how much they push, just how vulnerable they make themselves into one area, that's a clue to show you that's a very important point for them. It's an acupressure point for them. It's one of their talents that are sunk into our minds. And that's the idea of an overarching government that has the ability to do things that the standard person could never, ever dream of. That's the mind control. This is the purpose of telling you about the ISS. This is the purpose of convincing you that with government, we can travel 1,000 miles away and hit a golf ball on the moon and no one gets hurt. It's why we keep telling people that there's a black hole 500 million light years away, or that we've sent out a Chuck Berry playing a song and he's now out past the upper edges of the solar system. These are things that none of us could fathom doing by ourselves. And it gives you this trance-like comfort, doesn't it? A comfort that someone's got it figured out, that there is an expert above me that's going to unlock my ability to be comfortable by injecting fear to begin with, like from the very beginning.
And the ISS is a perfect example. Now I see why the relevance of it and why you raised it is because they have such fanfare, don't they, about the Russians coming up to meet the Chinese, and you've got the UK, I don't know, Muppet clown, and some teacher, and it's an amalgamation of all nations, which gives fuel to the trolls to just say what they're all lying, so everyone's lying.
That's exactly it, John. That's why it's such a crucial
world enemy
important poll.
Right?
Yeah, it's so important that's why they're willing to stick their neck out so far and say, no, we're going to have to cling to this lie because this is this good. Like it creates that much of an overarching. Again, even look at the psychology of it being above you in space, of this psychological mastery of what the heavens are. That's why Hubble is such a crucial tool for them, because they're able to claim that we have a telescope that, because it's outside of the atmosphere, it's able to see things that no one else here is ever going to be able to see. You've instantly created another, what is Standard Oil? Constriction. What is Hubble telescope? Constriction. It's constriction of information instead of constriction of oil. It's the exact same framework. It's how this whole system works.
Or
Once
another
you've got
word
this,
would be scarcity, maybe.
For me,
Yes.
John, it's they're creating priest class. They do, as you say, it's not something we can do. It's not information we can yield ourselves. But if we trust them and what they say, then we can have this magical information.
they've occulted it. And in fact, if you think about the very first secret society, let's go past Egypt, because it's a little bit harder to picture then, because I have to talk more about magic. Let's just go to like Rome and black nobility. You've got this group, you've got 13 bloodline families, and you're gonna control the entire world. You're gonna take Rome, the first triumvirate, the second triumvirate. You're gonna create a third one, but it's gonna be a darker one. It's not gonna be a force where we're gonna have figureheads. We don't want Julius Caesar just going around getting stabbed. I want to be a ruler that doesn't get stabbed. How am I going to do that? I'm going to put a person in place who's going to get stabbed in my stead. You start to have this subservient government being formed, where there's an underground hierarchy that takes place. The second you go underground, this is really where it's interesting, because it ties into like God and what evil really is. Because the second you go underground, you're taking information and you're hoarding it. Or, just as effective, you're claiming to take information and hoarding it. It's really important that people understand that having information and hoarding it and claiming to have information and hoarding it are exactly the same thing. They have the exact same power over everyone's mind, because they're hoarding what is something that's either true or not true. You don't know. So a long time ago, when the black nobility was forming, one of them saying, I have the secret. I understand what God is. God is telling me here's how it works. God is behind this curtain, and none of us can go back behind this curtain and talk to him. This is the living embodiment of Lucifer, is behind this black curtain. And the 13 of us, we have a privilege where we get to stay within our curtain. We can't go inside that curtain, but we have our own curtain, and no one can come inside of our curtain. So now there's another ring of Saturn that's outside of that. And that outside ring is the elite. Those are the Rothschilds we see. Those are the Rockefellers. These are the puppet people that we see in public that we can accuse and point to, but they're outside of their curtain. And then what's outside of that curtain? Now you have the Masonic lodges, right? And they're in their 32nd degree, 31st degree, 26th degree. All of this comes out of the exact same core, which is they've taken either something that's true or not true and occulted it. And really, that's what evil is. Satan literally could be an empty curtain, and the entire situation could be built around lies talking about his existence. If you think about how trauma spreads and how psychopathy treads, both scenarios could be true. There could be a living, breathing, red-beasted Lucifer back there that's got like a vagina and a big schlong, and he's like all this Baphomet stuff. It could be. Or there could be nothing back there, and there could be 13 psychopaths that have simply created a framework. They've created a pyramid scheme, right? But with information.
With the
what
Wizard
they're
of
calling
Oz.
sacred information. Yeah, basically.
I actually watched about 20 minutes maybe of a documentary I intend on finishing a little bit later. I think the title is How the Devil Got His Horns. And it talks about how I think 6th century, there were no artistic depictions of a Satan, a devil, anything like that. And the first one that this guy in the picture I'm trying to share my screen while I'm talking, so multitasking not my strong suit. Hold on. The first picture that shows the temptation is allegedly this mosaic, which is, interestingly enough, a red angel and a blue angel. The red angel has the sheep, the blue angel has the goats. And the argument is no, this isn't, and the argument back and forth. But essentially, this idea of good and bad, dark and light, red and frickin' blue. You said it way earlier, and I couldn't believe and forgot I had the picture ready to go. So yeah, this
awesome.
idea that it's that stick or carrot or that whole good and bad, just to to lead people into whatever your control mechanism is. There it is. I mean, and blend it all into purple in the middle.
That red and blue works in the UK as well, because we've got Labour and Tories, and they're red and they're blue. Do you see a sort of natural progression through history as like the priest class having, say, Galileo time or whatever, where they just invented the telescope, but no one else had a telescope. Leon Foucault had his gyroscope. No one else had a gyroscope. And then later and later, but people started being able to recreate what they did in the past. So they sort of made a leap to the cosmos, where literally no one could recreate what it was that they're telling us. We have to trust them absolutely, because you're not going to recreate it. It doesn't matter how much you have. But now they're inventing people like SpaceX and all these third-party private space firms that are apparently doing these things that NASA and the other space agencies could do that no one else could ever do, but they're doing them because they have enough money to do them, and now we have to trust them, and they're the next priest class. Sorry, Adam.
No, I was going to say, I added to that. You said Foucault, and Foucault's a great example of that with hindsight in mind. Foucault, when he brought his thing out, his gyroscope that no one else could make, and his wild claims and the knowledge that he got that it shows the rotation of the Earth. And then now when we look back, when we look behind the Wizards of Oz's thing, behind there's just a piece of crappy old machinery that couldn't ever even stand up to provide the claims it was making, even mechanically, and maybe that's the same.
Can recreate, 100 years later.
Well, maybe that's the same thing in 20 years' time. They will be laughing even more now at the thought of rockets landing backward.
Yeah, I think that anytime you find constriction, literally in any field, if you can find a place where there's a constriction, what I mean by that is where you can see something that no one else can see due to if you can create a bottleneck, you're going to have a psychopath that's feeding there. Either he created the bottleneck or he's there feeding off of it. And so I've noticed that constriction is a cipher. You could pretty much uncover huge, colossal mind control and lies whenever you see constriction. It should be built into all of us. I mean that. It's actually part of what I touch on in the book, is keep looking for that same piece of constriction, because the moment you see that, there's going to be a priesthood class around it. There's going to be a coveter. There's going to be a psychopath that's going to use that to feed every time. In space, it doesn't get any better than that. So does the CERN. Holy geez, man. This particle accelerator crap is just, it's the exact same thing, except for it's right here. And that's why George Bush Sr. was pushing just so colossally hard to get one in Texas. He wanted it to be bigger and better than any other collider ever built. Anyone ever. No one will stop the collider. I mean, he's yelling on the camera, like, I will have this collider. It will be born here in Texas by Americans. Luckily, they pulled out of the project. But it's the exact same thing. And then you look at the occult laughing their asses off when they're like, hey, what if we had like a goat at the opening ceremony? And then one guy's like, hey, that's pretty funny. That's a great idea. Hey, I spoke to the choreographer. Man, she says she wants to run with that. Let's see what she does. And next thing you know, you've got this 4-hour satanic ritual live feed across the world.
I was going to say, we got the goat. Could we maybe push for some flying satanic bitches? You know what I mean? Yeah, we got the flying satanic bitches.
Got you. Yeah, hey, this satanic bitches. Can you guys free for a gig? Yeah, we can come there. It's okay. Now we're gonna need a butt butt humping ceremony.
Definitely get the butt
But
humping.
this is what cracks me up is like you mentioned about CERN and everything. I mean that's a tunnel that's underground that you can't even see from the surface, but they're telling us how our universe works from it. And this is why I think we probably got a few wry smiles when you were mentioning the guy walking up an enzyme or pushing a dung ball. We had a discussion about this a couple of weeks ago, and it was along the same lines, is that, like you said, it's such an emotive and an amazing sort of animation, but an animation it still is that we can't see on that level. So again, we sort of take things that are so that I don't know. It's where do you draw the line between reality and pure fiction, whether it tickles you in the right area or it doesn't, you know?
Yeah, that's where that zeticism really comes in. If you can adopt zeticism, then you get to be cool for automatically doubting anything else. Like it becomes your standard. It becomes your standard mode of operating, which is, unless I can directly perceive that, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to have to assume it's bunk. And no one in the world should be offended by that. If anything, people should be looking at that going, yeah, that makes sense. But we really shouldn't assume that that's true, because
I would say cool, maybe not the word, because I that's what I live by or try to, is the zetetic sort of. If I don't know it, then it's a belief. So therefore, I really don't know an awful lot. But I don't get wow, you're cool for that. I get absolute infuriation. It's like, what, you don't believe anything? You don't believe China exists? You don't believe this, that, and the other?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that's, I kind of more meant where it becomes okay. It doesn't feel, there's no tax involved with you doubting something. In fact, if anything, you're more ashamed when you don't doubt something. Like when you catch yourself just naturally believing what someone's told you, even though you cannot prove it or experiencing it, yourself.
Yeah, right.
And that's really where the different layers of awareness and existence really come in. That's why these trances that we're in now aren't our real trances. But we're capable of trances that are so much more profound and deeper than the trances that we're stuck in every day.
When you say trances, what do you mean?
So I'm talking like flow state, like what we call flow state now is probably like 3%. Like, I'm just making this up. I'm not trying to be all scientific, but it's like 3% of our potential. If you think about the kind of flow state, imagine a flow state that lasts for 12 years. Like, imagine how amazing that painting would be if you were in that state for that long. Imagine what your craft, whatever alchemy it is. Right now, we're lucky to have flow states maybe of 4 hours, maybe 12 hours. If someone's in the right kind of setting, maybe 4 or 5 days. But the dissonance is so strong. It's related to our roads, in my opinion. If we didn't have so many roads, I feel like flow state would last longer. I realize that sounds kind of weird, like what I mean by that, but it has more to do with, I think flow state has more to do with our individual vibration, the kind of tone, frequency, and energy that we're allowed to put off as an individual. We're sort of like prana thumpers, like in that movie in Dune, where the dude comes out and he stabs a spear into the sand, and as long as that thumper is allowed to keep going, he's calling this giant worm that's bigger than all of us. That's what ideas are. That's what the perfect song is. That's what the perfect sculpture, or that's these are these states, these trances that we can enter into, where we believe in ourselves enough where we can look at this giant piece of granite and say, I'm going to make the statue of David out of something that's never ever been attempted, to be this big, to be this immense or this powerful. It's what CERN is, but on the dark side. Because if you think about it, CERN is an alchemical spell of belief. They're injecting a belief into enough people's minds that it's generating enough money where they're able to do it. And for centuries to come, or decades to come, it depends on how long this lie lasts, people are going to be constantly pushing that and believing it and insisting. And they're going to be building a whole new life around what CERN is and what it does. These are trance states that the quote, quote, bad guys are able to do. They can create a trance state that lasts their whole life. Someone like Crowley, or someone like Al Gore, or someone like the Bush family. These are people that are able to induce trance and have people die for it. They're considered high wizards because of that.
Yeah.
Imagine that same thing, but on the good side. I use good loosely here, but imagine someone, you know, like a Jedi. Imagine what a Jedi could do if he had a campground and there were all these different people that were coming that were being quenched of their trauma. And now they're going out thumping in a whole new way. They're not calling a worm. They're calling this mythic bird, this giant, you know, solar powered bird that's bigger than all of us to come down. But because of our mind control, because of how Hollywood works, this is why horror is pushed the way it is through etherics. Like everything etheric is considered horror related, like ghosts and things like that. This is a constant attack on prana and on our ability to control our own energy and to manifest it in certain ways.
So how long do you think I mean, this is purely subjective. How long do you think this trance is going to last for? And do you think that most of us are outside of the trance, like you called it something I can't remember, but it's like when you have a creative inspiration to
right.
do that, flow state, yes.
Yeah.
Like putting a roof on a shed, or creating something, or drawing a picture, or strumming a song, or whatever. Do you think most of us are kept sort of deliberately kept out of these flow states?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And how long do you think that can continue for, if so many of us are waking up exponentially?
I think that this is where I get into cosmology more, which means I could lose you guys, and that's totally fine as far as like where we end up. And this is evolving. This could change, but I think it comes down to what is the purpose of us being here. And I used to approach the world as the world's broken because it's full of lies. And we can clean the world if we get rid of all the lies. And once we get rid of all the lies, then the world returns to what it should be. I don't think that way anymore. I think we're looking at something more fractal. And if you don't have a dimension of truth, then you don't have that spiral arm of fractality to go down, you know, where all of a sudden now you're spinning into this unending fractal where things become truth or not truth in a spectrum type situation, just as a fractal would spin. So in a lot of ways, I think either A, this world is here just as a fractal, which means that we need all this untruth to show what truth is, or B, we are living in an alchemical blender, and the lies are a very necessary function. It's like a giant paddle that's sticking in the dough of all of our awareness, like what we are. We're a giant dough, and it's turning the dough. It's mashing the crap out of us. It's literally treating us like crap until we will rise like a yeast to the occasion and stop falling for lies. So in a sense, the reason why we're here could be that this is an alchemical training ground where we're turning things that are like rusty, like a rusted steel, into something stainless. And how we're rusting is that we're corroding our consent. What we don't understand is that a consent is the extension of our epidermis, the outer layer of a cell. That cell membrane, which is see-through, translucent, you can't really know it's there, that is our consent. And until we're able to wheel in that consent, we're going to keep being fed lies by a necessary paddle, the necessary force that they need lies to put in here. Because if we didn't have lies, no one would understand what consent is, because we just go around trusting each other. We'd all just be Bambis going, I love you, you love me, everything's great. So none of us are able to train. None of us are able to refine ourselves, you know, just as you would whisk the fuck out of an egg, you know, until it finally turns enough froth to where it's risen, and now you've got something you can work with.
I like throwing gravel into a rock tumbler. That's my favorite analogy.
There you go. That's great.
piece of crap into a tumbler and letting it just be destroyed and coming out beautiful.
Yeah.
And that would work for other things as well, wouldn't it? I mean, you're talking about truth and lies. That would work for good and evil as well, wouldn't it? Is that one can't really exist without the other.
Exactly.
Or
Yeah.
there is no, but isn't that going into sort of relativity?
It is, and that's why this is why I love that you brought this up. This is what I live for, is looking at this and going, well, wait a minute, James, doesn't that make you relativistic? And it could be, unless you insert one more truth to that, which is the ideal is not to be good over evil. The idea is to be unindoctrinated over indoctrinated. Because when you were unindoctrinated, when you were a full zetetic, all of your moments become Zen flow state because you were inside your core experience. And the only world that you accept as real, the only plasma that you help to generate with your mind in the ether, is world that you've directly experienced. Everything else is dismissed as, this is actually propaganda from this person, but you won't even see it as propaganda then, because you are so elevated at that point. All you see it as, oh, here's a traumatic pain coming from Bob, from something that happened to him 3 lifetimes ago with his great-great-great-grandfather who mistrusted this other person, blah, blah, blah. In other words, if you can find that state where evil is not only acceptable, it's absolutely necessary, it really puts you on this different level, you know?
James, you're saying there about this affecting Eric Field. That seems quite important to how you're describing things, the way.
There was a quote real quick before you tackle that, James, that you said something on Tuesday that stuck with me. I wrote it down when you said it, and I have it on post-it. It's been staring at me every time I come down here. It's just been running through my mind. And it applies so many different ways. And I think, John, you'll get a big kick out of this too. You said, what we consent to becomes an amoebic extension of our body, of our cells. And whether you look at that as a good, you're consenting to things against your will, sort of in a bad way, or you're consenting to things that are good, the way that just sort of extends you out as it's your consent, and how that's what you are now manifesting through your consent has really stuck with me. And I just wanted to get that in there before you tackled this.
Well, and that's really related, because both these tie in with the ether, the etheric field. The reason why 1905 special relativity was invented is to destroy the idea of transmuting matter with the mind and with belief. The idea of collapsing away through awareness. You know, this is something all of us can see through the double slit experiment. We understand that awareness collapses away, which means that there is existing a permanent field of potential. Ether is potential. What we observe from ether, what we consent with ether, is what actually manifests in what's real. So by consenting, what you're really doing is you're creating a asynchronous connection with the ether that has given your consent, that you've given your consent to. So think about war. I've been told that they're weapons of mass destruction. In my mind, I'm picturing the ether of Iraq, and I'm consenting to send brainwashed people with guns over to that area, and we are going to liberate what is a cruel, horrible ruler. If one person was to feel that way, nothing would happen.
I think that's pronounced Iran too. Just
yeah, exactly.
What it's worth.
It works. It works. It's worked a long time, right? I mean, this goes way back. If you consider that, even though you're paying taxes and you may gruff and humble and say, I don't believe in this war, your consent is by proxy, is being focused and sent over to Iraq, and you're going to burn oil fields. And the whole time you're going to say that you're doing it because you want to liberate these people.
I heard this recently, James. It was described as grumble but consent. A generation of people that you grumble about it, but generally you'll pay your taxes, you'll vote, and you're consenting.
Yeah, that's called selfish consent. or at least I'm calling it that right now. The reason why I call it that is because think about what you're doing. You're saying I authorize it and I don't want to own what I've just authorized. So it's like the worst possible thing you could do if you think about it. It's like building the gallows, bringing the rope to it, and then getting up on stage before the hanging and saying, I want everyone here to know that I don't like this.
Yeah, complete
like total
hypocrisy.
bullshit. Yeah, it's complete hypocrisy. But that's part of dissonance. Keep in mind, they're constantly trying to create that dissonance where you're going to create hypocrisy in yourself, because they understand that the amount of self-love that you're going to have to spend to admit your hypocrisy is enough to keep you at bay.
Well, that's it. That is them getting you to compromise your own morals and your own hypocrisy and cause hypocrisy in yourself, to the point where they are causing trauma and they're breaking your spirit, i.e. mind control.
Yeah.
How they do it, breaking you down.
If they can establish a common vibration where you're going to be listening to, if they start playing a song when you're 4 that says, I'm a hypocrite, hypocrite. And if they just played that the entire time through your whole life, it would be impossible for you to listen to the sound of silence. Like what are the light of truth. All those sounds would be tainted by that underground vibration of I'm a hypocrite, or I'm a sinner, I was born dirty, I was born to be bad, and maybe I will be redeemed. Like you're walking through your life just, I'm a racist idiot, I got a penis, I am a patriarchal evil bastard. And
it just about sums up every lyric, every category of lyric you've ever heard, or the songs that you've based your whole life on. I'm speaking for myself, but from the 70s to now, it's singing exactly that. But what you're singing is with the glasses on, in They Live, where you're looking at it and it's saying obey, consume, and then you take your glasses off and it's some supermodel line across a car, etc., etc.
Well, that's why shame is so effective, because it's that song. Shame is a million of those songs playing in your head, and because you were never given an opportunity to be handed the shame in a formal ceremony. This is actually the biggie. If you think about mind control happens when you're handed a shame, but through a distraction. So it's a short, sharp shock, boom, and then oh shit, here, quick, hold this, and then okay, I think everything's okay now. And now you're left holding something that had nothing to do with what just happened, but now you're holding this song. Now this song is playing, but you're back in your trance again, and you're still kind of shocked from it. So you're just okay with having one more marble. Your pockets have one more marble in them, and so it becomes even harder to break out of that next time. It's going to take that much more self-love. It's going to take that much more self-hope. It's actually the whole point of my book, the entire point of my book. If you could look through that book and say, what is this about? It's really about learning a psychology that makes you feel taller. Because if you can feel taller yourself, if you can stop shaming the ego, this is the big one that most people don't realize. It is so bad to shame the ego. I didn't stop one of us who said it earlier because he was making a point that was too good to interrupt it. But I think it would help the society as a whole if the next time someone says that's just his ego or his ego's too big, is if you actually consider stopping that person and going, wait a minute, ego creates morality. Ego makes us proud of who we are. Ego installs a desire to get things right. Ego is actually good, but because of the way it's shamed in society, it's used to create that constant song of I'm an egotistical, selfish guy because I won't live my life selflessly, because I won't give to everyone else and forget what I want. Like we're constantly showed all the time. No, if you really want to do well, you just need to serve others.
Well, that was probably me. That was probably me, James. But yeah, that's a point well taken. Ego, I think, could be a double-edged sword. It can work both.
It could be. However, I guess all I'm pushing is it could be a double-edged sword, but it's been used for so long since Freud. it's been used as an attack on us,
Mm-hmm.
that we have to push back from that, I think, and actually, push that back and say, no, ego's good. Ego's good. What you want is, you just need to learn how to be wrong. And it's okay to be wrong, because this is something that we don't understand, is when you know something, you've stopped learning something.
Yeah.
We've turned this into the idea is that the finishers are the ones who know things, that it's like, well, no, you've reached gnosis. But they're turning that beautiful word gnosis into something terrible. And they're saying, now you know this, which means you don't have to, you were done. You're an expert
They're
now.
burning their bridges. They're slamming doors behind them. Once they say they know something, then that's right. So you better be sure,
Yeah.
when you say you know something, that you actually know something. I was just going to take it on a curveball. I am a hypocrite. Have they? It's going to bring that up to 2019. I mean, a lot of people I know about complain about ringing in their ears and tinnitus and this sort of thing. And I'm just wondering that it to me, it struck me as it might have gone a little bit further than singing in your ear that you're a hypocrite and your ego is a bad thing and everything else. And it may have now morphed into electromagnetic signals or ringing tones in your ear. I mean, that they could, by singing that song, they're trying to create an emotion within you. And they can do the exact same thing by hitting you with a frequency that will do exactly the same thing. So, I mean, just wondering about ringing in the ears and things like that. Have you heard much about that? And do you think that has anything to do with sort of modern day mind control?
I've been experiencing that ringing too. A lot of my friends have, and it definitely gets like really bad sometimes. I think we forget that the power lines, Tesla wanted everything 240, 220. Yeah, he wanted everything 220. And he said he liked that frequency better because it was stabler. It wasn't as noisy of a current. But instead we went with 110. At least over here in America we did. We decided 110's better. And personally, I look at tinnitus, and this is just a guess, guys. I don't really know that much about this, but my guess is that because I know music and how sound propagates and turns into other sounds, two different sounds can create a third sound sympathetically, simply by those two vibrations dissonating with each other. And so maybe what tinnitus is it's actually a combination of Wi-Fi and the electrical signals that are all buried, underground or above us or whatever. We're not seeing what those currents are actually doing to us. And it's a constant jolt, it's a constant, you need electricity because it makes the world go round. It's this constant trance. I actually write about it. I call it, we're addicted to the blue venom of an electric cobra. And if we could return to a land where we live in campfires, where we're surrounded by campfires, I'm under the impression that tinnitus ends. And more importantly, we start to feel truth at the edge of our shoulders again, because the scapula, the way your shoulders are situated, it's an antenna. And we're not able to use our antenna properly because of all the noise that's out there. When radar was first invented, you had to ping a signal to get something back. You actually had to go up there and send a signal out from your dish. A ping, underwater is ping, but same kind of thing in the air. You're sending a signal out so you can listen for it to bounce back. There's so much noise in the electromagnetic spectrum right now that there's no longer a need for active radar. Active radar does not exist anymore. All of radar now is passive, which literally means because there's so much freaking noise out there that you can just listen for a dish, and enough of that noise is going to be bouncing back where you're getting signals that you can predict things. So
Hold on.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Go.
It may get a little sideways, but we can bring it back because it's all going to sort of tie in. The tinnitus, I have it on occasion too, but I've been noticing I have a buildup of like pressure just before it starts to kick in. So I know when it's going to start ringing because it's almost a pain. It's a buildup of like a pressure in my head. And I've been thinking, I really like the idea of the sort of binary resonance inside of our brain that's happening. And that got me to thinking about, our conversation on Tuesday that was happening with the pineal gland and the calcification of the pineal gland, and how maybe there's that piezoelectric effect that's going on, causing that tinnitus that we're hearing, that buzzing, that ringing in our heads is really just something happening going on with that pineal gland.
That's fascinating, because that piezo effect is so real. I mean, it's the oldest form of power we've had. In fact, the obelisks of ancient Egypt, those same obelisks, they were coated in electrum, and the type of yellow granite and the red granite they used has those same properties. And as long as you've got the cleavage right on the crystal, as long as that cleavage is perpendicular to whichever energy you're trying to interfere with, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they could just activate us pennially through a 5G tower or whatever else it takes.
Yeah, I like that as well, Josh. What that now you mention it, 5G, what do you make of that in terms of mind control?
Well, I think 5G is obviously the next electromagnetic fence, and that's really why I keep saying countries aren't what we think they are. And I just really wish more people would wake up to that. It would, man. I just put out this idea called bio-regionalism. It's my last article, and it explained how we can fix our government. But more importantly, it shows why no one's come up with this idea before.
Before you get into this, James, I want to say I've reread this article probably 6 times now. Of all I've read on your site, it is my favorite at the moment. And again, as I said Tuesday, this is why I'm sitting right here talking to all you people, because this is what just tell them about it, man. It's amazing. And I've linked your site and the book here in the description for everybody as well.
Well, really quick, what bothers me about 5G is it's distributed from the top of the pyramid, and it's injected into everyone who's below it. So it's an Amway. 5G is an Amway operation. No one on the ground floor is allowed to introduce Amway. Amway is given to us. It's put in the catalog of things that we can either buy or not buy, but this is the product. And if you want to survive on the internet, you're going to need this 5G that we're rolling down with. Bio-regionalism, which is why I think countries don't exist, is because no one's come up with this. It's basically a blending of confederacy and anarchy. It's sort of like right there in the middle, where you have a series of sovereign bioregions that are stretched across the United States, that own their own airspace, that have their own EPA, that muster their own militia, and have sovereignty. This means they can have their own FDA if they want, or they can not have an FDA if they want. It's really up to them. But the crux of this, as it relates to 5G, because I'll just skip to that, is this is a percolated government. It's government that comes from the bottom up. And what's nice about that is that the second a nationwide or a global company wants to come in and roll in 5G, they are stuck with having to come to every single bioregion and satisfy the requirements for that individual bioregion to do that. Among which could be things like, well, no, down in Louisiana, if anyone wants to bury anything in our land, you're going to have to come down here and live with us for 3 months. And the guy's like, well, what are you talking about? It's like, well, yeah, our governor, we don't allow our governor to live in a mansion. He actually couch surfs. It's actually part of our requirement for our government down here, is that any elected official, if our music bands can suffer the couches of people across America to spread their music, then why can't a politician do the same thing with his message? It's this idea that you're going to have to grassroots literally everything. And when you grassroots everything, now you don't have one gatekeeper that's pretending to be a gatekeeper like the EPA did with Monsanto. Instead, you have a bunch of parents going, you want to install a tower that has a micro frequency that cuts through trees. So we have to cut down all the trees. And you're saying that we can microwave chicken, but it's safe for my kid to walk in front of it. Okay. You're creating this system where it becomes impossible to roll out something nationwide. There should be no reason why anything would have to be nationwide. If anything, there should be an agreement from all the bioregions saying, this is a fucking damn good idea. I love this idea. How can we help? And they're just going to do their bioregion port of that to connect it to all the others. So 5G literally is proof that there is a system that owns the restaurant in which we pretend that the maitre d' is the president of. And this owner is installing 5G throughout the planet. And they're doing that to control us. They're going to be able to operate us just like they do software. They already do that now. What's funny is that 5G isn't even a new idea. If you look at what television programming is, what is it? It's an energy, a frequency, a vibration. Send it exactly the right tone that creates a state in your mind where you believe that you need an overarching authority to tell you stories about it raining diamonds on Neptune and saving you from Iran being 6 months away from the nuclear weapon. Because last summer they were 6 months away also from the nuclear weapon. So it's creating this constant state again, the two towers, Joachim and Boaz, fear and okay, and everything's going to be fine. And so that's what 5G really is. It's proof of what's actually really running our system, which is not government.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, I'll tell you what, James, can you give us all the places everyone can find you at? I'm sort of winding up because I'm about to board the good ship Solace.
Well, I was about to
en route to the outcast island.
2 and a bit hours ago, you were about to ask him about submarines. I was about to remind you about it. What we should.
I have no idea what you're on about.
We were talking about the thermal layer and how can you signal a submarine if the Earth is a sphere? And we talk about the thermal layers in the ocean that transmit sound. There's a SOFAR channel, and it makes no sense to me at all how a SOFAR channel can basically be a giant donut ring that wraps around the Earth, but a whale or an explosion or a submarine ping can travel 1,000 miles through that round donut and still give data, versus if it was flying through a flat plane of a SOFAR channel, which is actually how it works now. So that was just a little peek at my own work in the Navy had me as a submarine hunter. So just learning about the thermocline and about how sound propagates underwater really makes it look impossible that the world could be spherical.
But there are these density layers. I'm going to play devil's advocate here because this is what I hear back from my ham radio friends, amateur radio, all the rest of it. There's this density layer that goes around the ball and it bounces off the top and off the bottom and off the top and it goes around the ball. I mean, that's so much more easy to understand than the fact that no, we're on a stationary plane and it's actually just transmitting under the right atmospheric circumstances. I can manage to pick up radio Beijing last night on my tiny little receiver in my shed with a 12-foot whip or wire. There you go. It's bouncing up and down, basically, is what you're going to hear back.
Well, I don't see how it could bounce off of the vegetation off the ground as it claims to do with ham radio, and still arrive with the accuracy and clarity that it does. The same thing would actually stand for underneath the water. I've got an illustration here of a sound channel in which it's like a flat Earth kind of system here, where basically as the waves are allowed to bounce around, if it's bouncing on the top or the bottom, it's still going to come off with the same angle of refraction. So basically you're going to end up with a similar kind of repeating pattern or a dip. Whereas if the world was rounded like this, then you're going to end up with some crazy dissonance in which when it's bounced off the top and goes down, it's going to have a different angle than when it bounces off the bottom and goes up. Now, you could say that, sure, you could still hear sound underneath the water in a spherical Earth. I would argue and say you could, but I would also argue that that sound would be very garbled. It would actually be changed depending on how far it had to go.
I was going to say, you hit the nail on the head with the word clarity.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at this illustration, for example, if one of these whales was telling its other whale through a moo, my favorite color is green. If he's only 100 feet away, he's going to hear all that. But if he's 1,000 feet away, which you can hear things 1,000 feet away in the SOFAR, you're not going to hear my favorite color is green, because each of those wavelengths have different, they're going to have different wavelengths to them as each syllable, as each fumone is being broadcast from the lips.
Absolutely.
And as they bounce from the top to the bottom, the ones on the top are going to become longer. The ones on the bottom are going to become shorter. So you're going to end up with, and you're not going to be able to look at that sound and analyze, I've got a target, sir. It's 16 miles southeast of this direction. He's heading at a vector of this. I just don't see how it would be possible to utilize any of that data because of how dissonant it would be as it's being bended, around that curve, to accurately determine how fast they're coming, where they're going, and then we enter the whole torpedo incident. So
and you're not coming from a point of layman here. You used to be a sub hunter.
yes,
There aren't many people that can say that.
yeah, I was a surface sub hunter, which means I was hunting submarines on the surface of a ship. And I've been very careful to not say things that I'm not allowed to say about what I do, because I could go to jail. I have a secret rating in that. But everything that I'm telling everyone here, I purposely picked out things that I knew were not considered classified, so everyone else could research this too, because this is just simply how it does it. Our life's dependent on being able to find an enemy. And it didn't help us to be able to say, we found the sub and he's roughly over here. He's either going to be 3 minutes away or 2 hours away. I can't tell because the Earth is a ball. That's not what we were doing. We were able to launch a torpedo from miles away and freaking hit that target, depending on, it didn't matter what his vector was or how fast he was. You're going to need something highly accurate. And that's what the SOFAR is. It's basically a channel of water that has a consistent fall in pressure. It's not a consistency of pressure because it's going to be deeper at the bottom, but it's basically like a mile down, things calm enough where the sun's not affecting it too much and where pressure is able to affect it just right, where your sound is producing an even enough bounce and an even enough flow to render a signal that you can use. This is why sonar doesn't work as well right up next to the surface. It's too choppy. There's too much action going on. So ask yourself, if the choppiness of the water throws off the propagation of sound, how in the world would the curve not throw off the propagation of sound? It's just simply, in my expert opinion, I don't even like using that word because I think experts are what causes propaganda, but it just doesn't seem at all likely that this is how it would work.
No.
But again, we were all trained. Once it came time to analyze a signal, we were shown charts like this, where everything's just straight, where it's just like, no, it's just straight. And, of course, your SOFAR is going to be a different depth depending on the temperature, the density, the ocean currents, everything around it. But once you find your SOFAR, once you can sense where that SOFAR is, you're able to predict from that and use it to find enemies.
Well, like you were saying earlier, that what you were trained on were flat maps. So
yes,
it's exactly the same with NASA and their extraordinary document about training astronauts and everything using a non-rotating flat surface, etc. Yeah, Adam, thanks for bringing that up.
And let me just one more look at this. This diagram says it perfectly. If it didn't matter, like if it didn't matter that we'll know this should still work in a sphere, then I'm telling you, this chart, you wouldn't need to have a sweet spot source for the sound channel, because you could just predict it from anywhere, which means you could be sending sound at any of these depths, either super high or super low, and still be able to predict things. Because even though the pressure or the temperature is changing and bouncing that signal, somehow magically we're able to determine where it comes from, as if we live on a flat earth. It's just all bunk. There's a specific reason why not only submarines, but whale life use this same SOFAR channel. They need something parallel.
Do you think there's something similar in the above sea atmosphere? And this is why shortwave radio I can receive
Absolutely.
China.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly how it works. I think that you're looking at sonar above the surface, really.
So
Well,
can I just
something, don't they?
Just check something out with regards to what you're saying in terms of this wave function. There's absolutely no way that these waves could be subject to a 7/6R function. Because there's, and I say that tongue in cheek, but there is, when we were talking to Rob Durham and the Wi-Fi signals, there was postulation and a formula to show how for some reason it did obey some magical R number. There's absolutely no way in any of the work you did that
Can you
it's
explain
anything
the
other than
76R number?
yeah. So
anyone who doesn't know?
Mick West's magical optical way in which light bends that we can see around a curve.
I think they call it the K value in surveying
That's the one
as well. 76R. They just build into their formulas this imaginary sort of curve, basically. So sorry, Adam, what was the question?
The point was, with regards to that, so with all the training you had and everything, all of these numbers and all of the calculations are based upon the distance projected across a flat surface and not any form of compensation for the curvature and the effect, as you show in there, that would have with regards to where the relative level was and would be when you project a beam out.
Yeah, the only training we had in curvature is when they just show you a drawing, and then everything else, once it's time to get work, everything else is flat. Everything else is shown. Here's your different layers, and it's just magically works. It just magically works flat.
Well, I'll tell you what, James, they did do. I mean, there are surveying records out there available for across the Atlantic, as far as I know, across the Pacific, and they show that they are the flattest plains. The seas, the sea beds are the flattest plains.
Abyssal.
Yeah, there's some sort of nomenclature to it. Abyssal plains, are they? Yeah, that rings a bell. But I mean, they're literally saying thousands and thousands of miles are the flattest thing you've ever seen, which is the seabeds. So where on earth is the curve?
Mm-hmm. Well, just like in underwater, when you ping from a surface ship, you're sending it straight down, and then it's going to go down. It's going to hit that layer, and it's going to start bouncing like that. There's no reason to think that the same thing wouldn't happen with the atmosphere, where you're basically sending a signal up, and it's going to hit either an electromagnetic covering, or it's going to hit just a different pocket. There's like 7 different layers to the atmosphere. So who's to say that there's not a sonar layer, a SOFAR layer that's built into radio? I'm not speaking about it because I don't have enough experience. I wasn't trained in that.
No, but that would be testable, surely. We'd be able to take, say, 3 locations and have transmitters at certain zeniths or certain angles, supposedly trying to point at the same point on a dome as opposed to a flat cover over us, and one would work on a dome, one wouldn't work on a flat, or
I would actually say I think it's harder than that. I say that because before I wrote this book, I was writing a book. I still am, but I don't know what I'm gonna do with it because this is before I was flat Earth. The book was about artificial intelligence and satellites. And so I was writing the book and I was researching the crap out of satellites. I was really fascinated about satellite propulsion, how they move around, how more importantly, how could a telescope utilize any kind of injection gas to move it to situate itself, because that by injecting or dejecting that gas, it would actually create a cloud that could cause problems with the telescope. And so I was reading about all these gyroscopic wheels that they have that are apparently spinning inside, and basically they spin up a wheel really, really fast, and just by doing that, that push from the gyro is supposed to turn the satellite slowly this way or that way. So I was reading all this stuff because I really wanted to finish my novel, And I couldn't get the satellite stuff to work in my brain. It didn't make sense. I looked in the third law of thermodynamics about propulsion. I just kept picturing myself, how could I ever fart into a shop vac and move forward? Like there's physically no way that I could ever get enough pressure or force from something like that. It just all fell apart, like every piece of it. And the reason why I'm saying that now is because during my debunking, I ran across something in satellites that I was just stuck for months in, and it's Doppler shift. You can analyze a signal from a satellite and actually track its Doppler shift as it moves across. I'm talking about, put your head in the idea that there's satellites and we live on a sphere. You can track the Doppler shift of that. And I was stuck on that for months. In fact, I was like, okay, that means satellites are real. That means I can finish my novel. I'm really excited. I really want to finish this book because it's really interesting. But it wasn't until I looked more into just reading about the Doppler shift, and I realized you would still get Doppler shift in a dome. Like you would still have that, because if something's over here and it's broadcasting through the dome, what I'm getting at is we're assuming that the signal bounces off the ground and then bounces off the first layer in the atmosphere. We actually don't know what is happening with that signal because none of us can see, what does that signal do?
Right.
What exactly, all we can do is measure the result of that signal and then determine that, to create sort of a generic formula that says, well, if it bounces here, it's going to be here next. So I only say that to say that it felt like, because of Doppler shift, that I see this world where it's going to be almost impossible to prove it to a layman that this is on a flat earth and it's not a satellite versus it is, without actually looking at the physical equipment and, more about going into space and things like that.
Yeah, the Doppler shift thing was interesting as well, and it baffled me for a long time, and still does. But I read something about the Doppler shift being it has to be in a linear direction. So, and then I got caught up in, no, this is only to determine the speed of something. It doesn't mean that, so like you're saying, across a dome, the Doppler effect would still be observed, but you can't equate speed to these sort of things, which is what I was trying to do at the time. But all I can think of is that if I was sat in, let's say, a football stadium, and I put a dome over the stadium, and I had a bunch of ham radio, amateur radio guys in there, or people like yourself that are sub finders and sub hunters, that over a period of time you'd be able to take shots at varying different angles and collate the information to say, all right, we had this response back and down to the nanosecond or whatever response back, and be able to map what it is above you, whether it was a dome or like it could be flat, who knows? But this is why shortwave radio fascinates the hell out of me. I've got a guy telling me you're getting China because you've got the absolute perfect bounce over all the continents and the seas and everything to get all around the ball to get to China. And then suddenly it comes all the way back again. This is where the clarity comes into it. I mean, yes, I might be able to bounce around a ball and back again, but I'll be buggered if I'll be able to hear, this is Radio Beijing and you're coming from so-and-so. There's no way. I don't know.
I don't think you could do your pinging thing, because I think the prerequisite for that would be a accurate ground map.
Say again, Adam. Sorry.
Prerequisite for pinging it off, doing a calibration, would be an accurate ground map.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
From all the way from there to Beijing, yeah, you definitely need like a whole world, an entire map of Earth to do that with a
accurately
memory.
laid out. Spot on. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, the it's only an approximate. You're not getting it, are you?
Let me clarify on this. On what I did, I had a 12-foot wire, which is a Sony sort of reel out wire thing, and it was attached to the antenna of a receiver that's literally double the size of a cigarette packet and runs on 2 AA batteries. And I was listening to Radio Beijing last night on this tiny little setup. I've since ordered quite a nice shortwave radio that I'm hoping will turn up within the week, and I am about to order a lot of wire, and I'm going to have a play with this.
A bit of test it.
A little bit of test it, yes, whilst on the good ship Solace on the way to the outcast island. And on that note, I think I better leave. James, it's I've thoroughly enjoyed this evening. I'll ask you again, please give us where we can get hold of you, where we can get your books, all the rest of it. I'm the only one leaving. No one else is. Please carry on and talk till your heart's content. But I'll say goodbye, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, John. It's been great. Anyone can find me on jtrue.com, jtrue.com. That's my website. And I write a free column there. You can subscribe to that. And you can buy my 2 books there, Spell 6 Dragons and Blueprints of Mind Control, which this is my latest one. It came out in March, and it's got pretty good feedback. I encourage everyone to read it. I know the author, so I'm kind of biased, but I think it'll open your mind up if you're into that kind of thing.
I'm getting ready to order my autographed copy.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
So Harriet the Spy in chat already said totally worth getting the print copy. Apparently Harriet loved James's book. So
well, I love sending the print copy because I'm actually physically touching it, filling out your address, I'm signing my name and stuff. So that is my favorite way to do it for sure. But it's on Amazon too. So
yep, I'll go ahead and click the button and just do it. You'll see it come through eventually.
All right. Thank you.
No, thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. I was really excited to be able to get you on here versus on Truth Frequency Radio, just because on here we can add that visual aspect to it and be able to include a lot of other things. So it was really, really cool to be able to get you on here. Thank you so much for spending some time. We're going to try to get out of here, hopefully within the next, say, 12 minutes, keep it down to 3 hours. That way we don't scare too many people off with a great big long show, and it'll give you a chance to take a little break. And hell, I got to say it, I'm tired and I could use some grub myself. So I think we ought to hear just wrap it up. Is there anything anybody else had any specifically? James, what are you doing now? What's ringing your bell as of late?
This bio-regionalism thing would be awesome if I could get more people to talk about that. I think what's important right now is that we awaken to our government, to what's happening around us with that. And if we could stop giving our consent for foreign wars, it'd be great. It'd be like really great. I lost my father in the Vietnam War. He was a Marine. I all of us have lost people or have been traumatized, that people are permanently traumatized by a result of what we're doing with our government. And it's just the constant trauma programming, from the time they killed Kennedy, that's as soon as they did that, they put us all in a state, and the next thing you know, they're able to move things around. And that's what 9/11 was. It was a trauma ritual. And there are people out there that spend their whole life planning rituals like 9/11. David Rockefeller planned that from a very young age. That was something that he wanted to do his whole life. And the Bushes were part of that. So many families are a part of that. And it really bothers me that I live in a country and, my consent is being extracted to help them. And I'm doing as much as I can right now to pull that in. So I'm really pushing a lot of sovereignty right now. And that's got me writing a lot about religion, actually. it's because religion is tied into where we place our sovereignty. Religion teaches us to take our sovereignty outside of our body and give it to someone else. And I'm trying to just talk about that, about the technology of belief, sort of, and why it's constantly being extracted outside of us, how that ends up creating a mind control, because none of us think we have our own power, or we think that we're evil for even insinuating that we might have some of that power. And so we're more prone to want to give it to the next messiah, whether that be Trump, or whether that be Obama, or whether that be a cult situation on TV, or belief system, or whatever. It's just from a very young age we're taught to find a guru and stick with him, and just do what you're told.
Well, here at the end, I've unfortunately had to turn on fans. The heat here in South Louisiana is bad, but hopefully we'll get you back on again, because I am just overly inspired by the idea of this bio-regionalism. Definitely want to get into that deeper with you. And then I don't know what you can, in the next 9 minutes or so, show us of some of the art that I saw over there on your Facebook page. If I start trying to share, I'll probably crash my computer. If you don't mind sharing a bit of that with us, so giving us a little bit of a idea of the inspirations.
So I got played hard by a woman. I got married, and she freaking played me hard. I'm talking just really bad. And that was actually what got me out of the mind control. Is it was, I noticed how quickly everyone was to just believe whatever she said. And I noticed real quick that we're not loyal to truth as much as we're loyal to comfort. So a lot of people will end up just siding with something that just feels good to believe. And so it was such a painful experience for me that I stopped working. I wasn't able to make a living for a couple of years. I went into therapy. I did like 2 different therapists. I was just trying to solve myself as quickly as I could. And one of the things I did to make myself feel better is I started making sculpture. I viewed my ex-wife as a dragon, and this dragon needed, sorry, I'm gonna mute this there. Okay. Anyway, I started making these big giant dragons, and can you guys see this? It's probably small, eh?
Yeah, if you'll make it full. There we go.
That's better.
So this is a bamboo dragon that I made. I made it with like a bunch of people that just wanted to help out. And what this is this is a bamboo, all these are bamboo pieces that are cut into scales, right? And these scales are attached to this dragon, and it wraps around trees and stuff like that. And this was a commission I did at a festival. I made the first dragon to actually try and impress my ex-wife. She wasn't impressed. And then and then they said, dude, this is really cool. Will you make one in Michigan? So I went to Michigan and made one. And then will you make one in Costa Rica? So I went to Costa Rica and make one. And then will you make one in Florida? So I made one in Florida. And then will you make one in Miami? So the book, The Spell of Six Dragons, is actually my journey through these dragons, through just the learning.
I was going to ask that.
So yeah, and so this is basically a sewer pipe that's been it's hanging from a wire here, and then inside, which this video doesn't show, it actually breathes what looks like fire. There's a smoke machine inside that blows out colored smoke at night, and it looks really amazing because its eyes light up and stuff like that. So that's a funny video of a guy pretending gravity's real. And then,
gotta love those bed sheets in space.
That's right. And then I guess I'll show you one more. It's just another dragon. I lost my page because of that gravity, dude. Oops. Here it is. Sorry about that. This one was also done in Michigan. And this is actually a smaller one.
Oh, yeah. Reminds me of my ex-wife, too.
But this is the beauty of the trauma, though. I was raised in a society where it was gynocentric but patriarchal at the same time, and so we live in a culture now where there's a scapegoat golden child that happens with relationships and things like that. And so this is why I'm a straggler of society. Anyone who's a truther or an alchemist it's someone that's been thrown off from trauma. You know, they've been lied to in such a way, or they've been hurt in such a way where they're just not able to participate anymore in society and what it does. And so you're forced to either go out and do drugs, you know, or abuse yourself. Not that I haven't abused myself, because I have, or, you know, try and just desperately as you can channel it into something else. And that's what these sculptures are all about. It's just me just trying to survive. I just really didn't want to live anymore back then, because I was under the impression then that the world was correct and I was mistaken, and that I just couldn't get right anymore. I just couldn't figure out how to believe what the world tells me. And thank God I kept going, because now that I'm older, or now it's been a few years now, I've met other people and they're going through the same thing. And nothing's been more powerful for me than connecting with other people that are going through the same thing. There's literally just nothing more powerful than that. There's just nothing. So I can't recommend it enough. This is augmented reality stuff too, by the way, but we don't have to go into that. So
well, you've connected with me tonight, James, and I want to thank you for a really good evening. I've really enjoyed it, mate, and hopefully we'll catch you again soon, because like Walt said, there's a ton of stuff. Before I go, if I could just give Anthony Riley another shout out on the work he's done. Guys, I know he's was wondering whether there might be a little TFR slot coming up, maybe just to discuss the way he's managed to extract this information, because I think it's absolutely brilliant the way he played it calmly and coolly, and I wish him all the luck on Sunday, because I don't think it needs announcing, but there's a big debate. It's Jaron and Anthony Riley versus Bob and David Weiss on Globebusters on the gravity debate. Is it a force? So I look forward to that. So yeah, shout out Tony. Good luck, mate. Put your lab coat on, mate. Put your lab coat on.
Anthony should know he's always got an open invitation. I don't do engraved invitations necessarily to the extent that, you know, James got one. That's the extent of my engraved invitation. I had Walt do it. But no, Anthony's always welcome on TFR. I mean, as long as he's around at 10 a.m., he knows where we are.
He knows where we live. Right. There we go.
He knows that there's the little green light on Skype's on to just buzz us a message.
Sounds like Tuesday morning sorted then.
Done.
Easy peasy. Absolutely. And assure, again, James, to say, please, 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 hope you can carve out some time to come hang out with us again soon. Sooner than later, for sure. We unfortunately get busy with all the different things we have going on, and sometimes forget these invitations we offer at the end of a show. But heartfelt and truly want to have you back and share and appreciate, like you can't even imagine what you shared with us today. Thank you so much, friend.
Thanks, Walt. It feels home to be here. It really does. I don't say that about every show. So I haven't done much flat earth stuff until now. So I'm glad to have the invite. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been a pleasure. You've really fit in our home, and we try to make it feel like home, because we want to be able to have that person come in and just be able to relax, and so we can, you know, be able to share in a very non-judgmental way and not have to be worried about, you know, maybe we get a little woo-woo, maybe we'll drop a fuck every now and again, and it's all right because nobody really gives a shit. Mm-hmm. There's no kids listening. Yeah, we're lucky if we have adults listening, so it's all right.
Talk about homeliness, Josh.
What's that?
We said in the week, you know, me and John was chatting. We've not, and I know it was him that brought it up, to be fair, by the way. We've not played Gravity in a lot of shows, mate. So I wonder if we can have that. Can we have that to leave?
We can definitely. I'll pull it up.
This is our favourite tune. Walt, I think, initially stumbled across James back when we started.
Absolutely.
I think it's quite appropriate for now.
I dropped Jaru 369. Is that correct?
Yeah, Jarue. Thank you. Yeah, Jarue 369 is my.
So that's
Twitter.
where James and I got to know each other on Twitter, and definitely if you hang out on Twitter, go follow. It's been quite an experience, which led me to the website and the guest. And yeah, it's been great. I'm so glad I got to know you there. And
me too, Walt. I've enjoyed it.
For being here.
Thanks.
And all the other appropriate links are there in the description. So anything you want to leave us with, James?
Keep it flat. Actually, keep looking, you know, keep looking. Just keep looking.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
If you research it, you will re-find it.
There you go. I love it.
But you were saying something earlier about sort of doing it on these weird rituals that they were doing on these anniversaries of space milestones, with the astronaut who almost drowned. Wow, my levels are down. Let me boost that up a little. Ah, there we go. The astronaut that almost drowned, and then there was what the sea algae on the outside of the ISS, and then I had a Crow 777 in the back of my brain, and I had this little piece of a poem I remember as a kid. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, I think was his name. The Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. I don't know if anybody knows it. It's pretty good. And I got to looking at it. I pulled it up just so I could see the little part that was in my brain, and I got to looking, and there was a lot of stuff that kind of applied here. I just want to read it real quick because it's appropriate, I think, overall. It's a long poem, and these are only just a few short stanzas. All in a hot and copper sky, the bloody sun at noon, right up above the mast did stand, no bigger than the moon. Day after day, day after day we stuck, nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. The very deep did rot, oh Christ, that ever this should be. Yea, slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. And then I read that, and then I had this pop into my brain, which I thought was kind of funny too.
An hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. But condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but a half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity began less than 2 years ago. The printing press came this year. And then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power. Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Only last week, we developed penicillin and television and nuclear power. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
Well, that's super inspirational. Not the one I thought it was, though. I thought that was going to be one with all the nice nautical references that I thought would be able to play really nicely into the little poem that I read. But it worked anyway.
Makes you wonder why you can't do it anymore, though, doesn't it?
2024, baby. We've already started the lunar space station. We're good.
And after those 50 years, there will be another time where we will not be able to do shit. And we will not understand why, but it was not because we didn't actually go in the first place. So remember, that's all that matters.
We will be the only technology that regresses and doesn't advance.
See, it's the mind control. If you listen to that speech, he's painting a picture of an overarching expertise that he can provide to the people, and he can do it in his term. While he's still in office, he's promising you, I will install an expert, and that expert will take care of you. All you have to do is believe in me. All you have to do is give this country your full consent.
That's it. That's awesome. Well, I think we're going to get out of here. My dogs, I think, are telling me it's time to go. So thanks again, James.
Thank you guys. You guys are great.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I love that you can articulate things so much better than the way my brain creates them. So it works out really nicely to be able to have somebody on that same level, but be able to get so much out of it. It's awesome. Thanks, John. I appreciate you coming in here and hanging out. Glad you're doing a little better than you were prior. Thanks, Adam. Glad you were here manning the controls.
I'm stood by for a full video replay. So, James, again, a pleasure, mate. Look forward to the next time.
You too, Adam.
Good night, everyone.
Adam.
All right, Walter, you have yourself a great rest of your day. I think I'm going to.
Thank you all so much. I love you all. Chat, watching. Thank you all. Thank you, James. Love you, man.
Thanks for the invite, Walt. Sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Josh.
It's been a pleasure.
Music, man. Thank you. Love you.
Love you too. I think Zach was probably cheering and clapping the same way we were. I think he was vibing on a lot of the stuff that you were saying as well, James. So.
Absolutely. That was one thing that kept just eating at me, is that Zach was not here for this amazing conversation. Because if there's anybody who,
so much, he's yes. I just know he is.
Yeah, miss you, cuz. See you soon.
You too, Rob. We miss you. Wish you could have been here for this one. This would have been really great. But
I don't know. I don't know about it.
Fun to say. Just say it. You don't have to mean it. Just say it.
Oh, I miss you, Rob.
There you go. See, I believe that. I'm sure he will. All right. Thanks, everybody. I didn't even look at chat once tonight. I'm so proud of myself. That's why. That's my incentive to come back and listen, so I can see what people were saying during the live chat replay. So that'll work out. There you go, John. There's my motivation. Now I can give it a savage rating.
We're going to get Josh's judgment.
Josh's judgment, because that's a pretty rare thing to ever find. Oh, I take that back. If you find me at the mall or in traffic, you'll beware of the wrath of Josh's judgment. All right. We'll get out of here.
Hit the button, Josh.
Right back here next week for another Have No Sphere on the Iron Realm Media YouTube channel. Love you. Bye-bye. Oh, you better quit it. I thought didn't it turn autoplay off already?
Remix. It's the remix.
You gotta be kidding.
Getting ready to sing.
Remix.
Not sung Gravity for weeks.
No thanks. I don't want YouTube TV, you some bitch.
Are we clear?
No,
No,
not
no,
yet.
no, no. We're just,
Man,
we're
we're gonna
just.
hear our song before we
Nothing's
go.
ever that smooth. Nothing's ever that smooth.
We'll hear this song. This is our song.
All right. Let me try this again.
Are we getting video?
Video's awesome too.
Heck yeah. Might as well.
Let's have lyrics. You
Figured I
know
had it
what's
up.
coming in.
Why
Gonna come in.
All right. Bye-bye.
We're up pretty high, our heads are almost in the clouds, and their feet are chained to the ground with their chains of misery. They've got a hold of me, they won't let go of me. Let go of me. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. So let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. They can be cruel and mean and a huge pain. Our heads are in the clouds now. Don't let them make it rain. A smile can be the sign they're missing out on their rainy day. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. So let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. They say we aren't strong enough, we don't have what it takes. I say yeah, they're wrong enough, and we'll show them someday. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Oh yeah, don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you while you defy gravity. You defy gravity. You defy